I'd like to begin by asking Chris Savage, the chair of the Washtenaw Dems, to read the land acknowledgement. Chris.
Thank you, Eli. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this panel. Looking forward to a lively debate. The Washtenaw County occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Odawa or Ottawa, the Ojibwa or Chippewa, and the Potawatomi or Potawatomi. Washtenaw County Democratic Party recognizes historic Indigenous communities in Michigan and those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. Washtenaw County occupies land ceded in the 1807 Treaty of Detroit. We further recognize the ongoing relationship of dependence upon and respect for all living beings of earth, sky, and water. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty, history, and experiences. Before we begin, I just want to let folks know that on August 15th, I'm going to make sure I get the dates right. August 15th at 6 p.m., we're having an endorsement meeting that will be via Zoom. There's a link to it on our website. You have to pre-register. It's important that you do pre-register because we have to check credentials to make sure that you have been a member of the MDP for 30 days or more, or meet other criteria that allows that requirement to be waived. But this is where we will be choosing our endorsed candidates for the November election. As you know, endorsements are always very tricky and challenging, but they are very important, especially these nonpartisan races, for people who are looking to find out who Democrats support in general. So if you are, an engaged member of this party, then we encourage you to come to the endorsement meeting and be heard about who you think we should be endorsing. With that, I'll hand it back over to Eli. I will have to leave soon because I have to prepare for a county convention later on today. Both the 7th and the 12th districts are having conventions today to pick delegates and alternatives to the statewide convention in a couple of weeks. So that's happening at 12:30. So I'll hand it back to Eli.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. So I should mention, I'm Eli Nathans. I'm a member of the Washtenaw County Democratic Party Programs Committee. This meeting is actually being sponsored by both the Washtenaw County Dems and the Ann Arbor Democratic Party. Both played a role in preparing it. Before we start the school board panels, I see that Debbie Dingle is here. I'd like to ask Congresswoman Dingle to say a few words. If I've clicked on the unmute button, so Congresswoman Dingle, you should be able to speak.
Thanks, Eli. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, guys, I'm a little swollen and not moving my jaw very well because I had hopefully my last surgery yesterday. But I want to say several things this morning. One, Washtenaw had a really tough primary season. There were a lot of hard-fought campaigns. We got to come together. I think what is going to save us in November is choice being on the ballot. But do not underestimate Tudor Dixon. Do not underestimate our Attorney General's opponent, whose name I keep wanting to forget, and a number of other races. We have competitive state legislative seats inside Washtenaw County. We can and must win the state legislature, but that's only going to happen if we come together and turn out votes. And I know that every year we say this is the most important election of our lifetime. I think this election, 22 and 24, are going to be about what happens to our democracy. We have the unity event on the 16th. It's time for all of us to come together. I want to mention just a few other things quickly. One, this toxic spill in the Huron River is another example of why there are so many problems. I think Tri-Bar should be shut and closed down. I am not supposed to be talking much at all, and I would like you to know I was screaming last night as I was on top of this. They're trying to contain the spill up higher. They do not believe that it will hit Barton Pond or us for several weeks if it is not contained. There may be a no contact advisory even for Barton Pond later today, and that's clear because the question is, we just want to keep everybody safe. And there's no testing has shown this anywhere near us. They're working very hard right now to make sure if it does, do they have what they need to make sure it can be cleaned up. and the water system is testing it. EPA is involved, Eagle's involved, HHS is involved. I've talked to the mayor about 10 times last night. It's inexcusable. This state does not have strong polluter laws. That's why we have to elect some people that are going to do something about this kind of polluter, who is the same polluter responsible for PFAS in our water. So we got to keep everybody safe right now, and everybody is human beings and animals. If I were, I'd just be careful in the water right now, and we are testing that drinking water every day. But we need people that are going to actually do something that put people like this out of business. And then I want to mention some things that happened at the end of July. We did get an assault weapons ban, which is something that took too long to do and was a major victory. We should have passed a CHIPS bill more than a year ago, but that is going to be a major, it's going to help our supply chain back. It's going to help protect jobs and create jobs, and it was very important to the state of Michigan. And the Senate is meeting this weekend. The House will be in next week, but we will have a reconciliation bill that will actually allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices and lower the cost of prescription drugs. And it is not perfect in any way, shape, or form, nor does it have some things in it that I want, like elder care. But it will take on and make significant steps in terms of global climate, LCB, and most of the, I think all the environmental groups are supporting it because of what it will undertake. I'm really pleased because my climate bank is in there. There are grants in there to help people make the changes they need to do. But this is it's significant progress. And you know, little by little can add up to a lot. So it is very important, and I'm going to make sure that through everybody on the leadership of Washtenaw, we're getting you all talking points. Gasoline prices have been going down for 51 days. We need to show people we are concerned about inflation and gas prices. It's real. But Joe Biden has gotten one hell of a lot done. And we need to arm you with the facts, so we're talking the facts. But I don't want, in 2016, I told you all I thought Donald Trump could win. And you all thought I was crazy. Donald Trump is playing in Michigan this year. He is a real and present threat. And we have to fight back and not let him win in any race in Michigan in November. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Congresswoman Dingle.
And Eli.
We will now move on to the first panel, the Ypsilanti School Board. This is going to be a very full meeting, I should tell you right now. I'd like to ask those panelists who are not on the Ypsilanti School Board candidates panel, please to turn off your videos. And I'd also like to ask everyone who's not on a panel to stay muted during the panel discussion. That background noises can create interference. So I invite all the three members of the Ypsilanti School Board panel now to unmute and to turn on their videos. So this would be the two candidates, Meredith Schindler and Jeanice Townsend, and also our moderator, Maria Sheler-Edwards. I should just say here a word of thanks to Maria for agreeing to moderate this panel. She herself is a former Ypsilanti School Board Trustee. Therefore, she speaks from a position of knowledge about this particular subject. Maria, would you care to introduce the panel and take over this part of the meeting?
Sure would. Thanks, Eli. First, let me welcome our two candidates. They are both incumbents, Trustee Meredith Schindler and Trustee Jeanice Townsend. I just want to say thank you so much for your service and for being willing to continue to serve the children. We're going to start with an opening candidate statement. You will have 2 minutes to talk about yourself and why you are running to hold on to your trustee position on our school board alphabetically. So we'll go with Trustee Schindler first.
Thank you, Maria. So my name is Meredith Schindler. I have been on the Ypsilanti School Board since the beginning of 2015, so the 2014 election. And it's been my pleasure, to be on it, my honor to be on it. I have been involved with the Ypsilanti schools since 2000 when I moved here with my young family. Both of my boys are graduates of Ypsilanti schools. My older one graduated from Ypsilanti Public Schools in its last year of existence, and my younger son graduated from Ypsilanti Community Schools in 2017. So we are a very involved family, and I just really want to express how much the Ypsilanti School District means to me. It is such a special place. We talk a lot on the school board about joy in education. We talk about, making students feel warmly welcomed, because we have students from all over the world. It's a hugely diverse in every possible way district. And that isn't as easy to find, as maybe it should be, as definitely it should be. And so our vision for Ypsilanti schools has been really powerful, and it's working. The schools are doing well. The response to the pandemic was flexible and humane, and just as well done as could possibly be. And that's on our administration with the support of the board. And so Ypsilanti is such a special town. It's such a special school district. And I just feel like I still have a little bit more to give to the school board. So I've chosen to run again this year for the 2-year seat. So I'm in a different race than Trustee Townsend. Trustee Townsend is running for one of the 6-year seats. And then we actually have another incumbent running for one of the 6-year seats, Sharon Lee, who couldn't be here today due to a medical emergency. But so we're in separate races, but we're both incumbents, and we're both really, I know, very excited to be here. So anyway, I'll stop talking for Trustee Townsend, and I will in fact stop talking. Thank you so much.
Thank you for clarifying the races, Trustee Schindler. That's really important to know. Trustee Townsend, you have 2 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeanice Townsend. I am an incumbent right now running for a 6-year term, as Trustee Schindler has stated out. I am from Ypsilanti. This is my hometown. I am a product of Ypsilanti schools. I'm very proud of that. I'm married to an educator, and also I have 2 daughters, one recently a graduate of Eastern Michigan University, and then another one that's attending WCC. I am also a realtor. I've been in the real estate industry for about 13 years, and then in the financial industry for 25. So my primary focus is on housing. I serve on the Washtenaw Area School Board as an officer. I am the secretary and the treasurer, and I also serve on several boards such as Rutherford Pool, as well as Ypsilanti Rotary Club, and some other nonprofit agencies, as well as my church. I'm very excited to be running in this race. I ran in 2020 and lost, but however, I received over 9,127 votes of my family and friends and my neighbors and everybody in the community. And even though that was the loss, my service did not deter. And so I increased my service to this district. I've been committed to this district for years, and I am going to always be committed to Ypsilanti schools, the students, the family, and this community, because this is who I am, and this district is a part of my identity. So I'm very fortunate to be in this position now. My areas of focus for me is always based upon literacy, also building collaborative relationships and building more partners for the district, as well as creating opportunities to address one of the major things that is a hindrance to the district, which is school funding and our debt. And so I've been on the board now. I was appointed in 2021, and I haven't even served a full year, but from that moment that I was put on the board, I've been working very hard, and I am involved in several different things that will support our district outside of just being on the board. So thank you for this opportunity today.
Thank you both for those terrific answers. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. You'll have 90 seconds to answer each one. I'm monitoring the chat to see if any questions come in from our audience. If not, I will continue down my list of questions. I should tell you we have until about 10:15. So we have about 30 minutes to have a conversation about why you'd like to be elected as a trustee. So I will start this time with Trustee Townsend. Would you please talk about the strengths and the challenges that you see for Ypsilanti Community Schools?
Well, I believe, from my short amount of time that have been on the board, I think one of the major strengths is that during COVID, it really showed the strength of the district. We were the only district that initiated making sure that we looked at the whole child in a sense of we made sure that there was funding for food, there was funding, made sure that all of our students had laptops and things such as that, or iPads to do their work. And we made sure that we increased our support in regards to mental health, with adding additional social workers and things such as that. Ypsilanti was one of the primary districts that even led with the masking decision. We looked at our families and we looked at making sure that our staff, our family, anybody that was working within the district was safe. Now, in regards, did you ask me about weaknesses as well? Yes.
Strengths and
So,
challenges.
yep. So, and part of our weakness, I think one of the weaknesses that we have is that we don't necessarily tell our story. We allow other people to control the narrative. And I think it would be, what would help us is just to show people that we are not a district that is inferior to anyone. We have a lot of different programs for our children that look at everything about our child. The whole child looks at the demographics and the culture that's within this community. We have several different programs that are out there. Our Spanish Emergency Program. We recognize that a lot of our students may not felt comfortable coming back in person, so we created YpsiY Connect to have an online program, and that program has increased over the year from 100 and 20 students all the way up to over 380 students right now. So again, we can also service Ypsilanti students as well as students in the state of Michigan, and we recognize that. And we are always ready to pivot. I think, when we talk about academics, we of course want to increase our literacy rates and things, because we know that literacy is very important and that it is a major contributor to the prison to pipeline, school to prison and pipeline. And so that's something area where we're creating, we have a curriculum that we have now that is culturally appropriate, as well as it looks at prevention, intervention, and things like that to help increase our literacy rates.
Ms. Townsend, I don't know if you heard the bell. That was a little over 90 seconds.
Oh,
So-
okay. Well, when I get to going, I'm always talking about the school district. But thank you. I'll listen for that the next time.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
It is a little difficult to hear. I didn't hear the bell either. Thank you for that comprehensive answer, Trustee Townsend. Trustee Schindler, would you please like to tell us in 90 seconds what you think are the main strengths and challenges for YCS?
Thank you. Honestly, I'm not sure that I can improve upon what Trustee Townsend said. I think that it's correct and accurate just in every way. But historically, it's true. I mean, we have not told our own story, but I think we're grabbing onto that. As Trustee said. So I think our strengths are, I've said this before, so maybe people have heard this, but at Ypsilanti High School, if you want to be on the golf team, they'll teach you to golf. If you want to be on the swim team, they're going to teach you how to swim. Like, you don't have to be training year round as an Olympic athlete to be involved in so many of these things that make the high school or the middle school experience, really meaningful to students. It's inclusive, and it has not always been feeling as inclusive as it should have to students of color, to students who are LGBTQ on the LGBTQ spectrum. But we're moving in the right direction on that so that it truly feels inclusive to all the students and all the faculty. and because that warmth, that inclusivity, that ability to experience what you want to experience in the school is just huge. And so that's just an enormous thing. In terms of challenges, you know, I think that lack of inclusivity was historically a challenge for many students. I'm not sure how many of the adults looking in from outside really felt that, but as the parent of graduates, I know that that was a real issue. But that has really been changing over time. Also, of course, the school funding. We know that the school funding has risen under the Whitmer administration, and that is huge, but it's still not equitable. You know, Prop A, the Headley Amendment, really baked inequality into the system such that the districts that have under-resourced students that need more of a safety net, in fact, got less funding. And so, you know, we're just always kind of fighting against that. And some of the ways that that the state has really insisted on what I feel is an inequitable amount of debt based on some rules that were in place at the time around the way the consolidation was managed by the state. So, you know, we're fighting an uphill battle on that, but we're getting there. So I couldn't hear that bell either, so I'm not sure.
You also were about a minute over time. So I'm ringing this bell as loud as I can. And I
maybe just interrupt. Maybe just say, please stop. Like that. I was listening for the bell and I couldn't hear it. Yeah.
I'm gonna go like this.
Yeah, please. Absolutely.
So this is for the 22nd warning. This is for the time's up. Okay, we'll try that.
Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much. I'm going to, looking at the questions, I don't see a question directed to our IPSI candidates, so I'm going to jump down to another question that I have on the list. Trustee Schindler was talking about our funding, which is a challenge in Ypsilanti, just based on the way things are structured in the state of Michigan. Another thing that contributes to that is the number of children that the district enrolls. And at one point, I know the percentage of resident students in Ypsilanti that we enrolled was about 50%. And I'm not sure if that's still accurate, but the number of students is directly tied to the amount of funding that we get in the district. And so Trustee Schindler, I'll start with you. How do you propose increasing enrollment in IPSI schools?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a lot about messaging, right? I think a lot of people in Ypsilanti have had perceptions of the IPSI schools as unsafe or not a quality education. Both of those perceptions are untrue, but we're working to undo a lot of historical, you know, systematic issues with not only funding, but also with perceptions of you know, majority Black schools, right? Let's just call it what it is. And so, you know, a lot of, because we know that we're, you know, we're not enrolling a lot of kids of different races for various reasons, but there is this perception in society, right? And it's not true, but so we're working against that. But we're messaging really strongly now. I think more of what can be done is the kind of things that are happening now: Grizzly Learning Camp, the YCS Connect, listening. You know, as leaders, it's important to listen. So listening to the community to find out what it is that will pull them back, and then providing that, you know, being responsive in that way. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you, Trustee Schindler. Trustee Townsend, would you like to answer that question? I'll just repeat it for you. Ypsilanti enrolls about 50% of the students living within district boundaries. How do you propose raising that percentage?
I agree with Trustee Schindler on that message. And I think what's important, again, is that we have to do a better job with controlling the narrative of the district. Everything that she mentioned in regards to, because we are predominantly Black and brown district, that the perception is that we're not learning over here. And that's far from the truth. And I want to be very clear on class of 2020. class of 2022 recently got over 1.3 million in scholarships to go on to different universities and or trade schools or things like that to pursue their education. And that's something that we need to talk about. The other thing is, again, we continue to look at the whole child. We are making it a point to also make sure that all of our libraries are equipped with culturally appropriate books to teach children about who they are and where they come from and why they are so important. And then also, you know, we're continuing to bring different things to the district that no other district provides. For instance, the seal of biliteracy and things like no other district is providing that, where their students can say they graduated and they have a seal stating that they are literate or bilingual. I'm sorry. I saw the timeout, so he stopped me. So
Thank you, both. We do have some questions coming in. So the first question is about internet access. And I know that this does affect students living in our district, especially since we've had virtual school for the last couple of years. If kids don't have strong internet at home, then that impedes their ability to attend class. So the question from Dr. Ron Suarez is, Michigan is perhaps the last state to create a state broadband office to apply for some of the $65 billion being provided by the feds. Broadband is a nonpartisan issue. Rural Republicans care about getting internet access. Perhaps knowing and caring more about this will get votes in November. What is your position? And Trustee Townsend, we'll start with you.
I totally agree. I think broadband, especially in rural areas, is a major issue. And I think that's something that the county needs to really pay attention to and increase. I do want to point out the fact that during COVID, we recognized, or that the district recognized, that there was some internet challenges for students. And so they partnered with Comcast to make sure that discounted or free services were provided to students in order for them to be able to complete their studies and do work at home and things like that. So I think that's the cutting edge that YCS provides, is that we're very proactive in looking at the needs of our students and what it is that they will need to have in order to, or the tools and resources that they need to have in order to be successful. But I agree. I think that we have to push more with our local leaders to better the position that we are in regards to broadband services. And that is something, as we continue to move forward in the society that we're in right now, we're dealing with COVID and possibly going on and offline, we need to make sure that we have those services available.
Trustee Townsend, would you like to add to that, Trustee Schindler?
Yeah, there's very little that I have to add to that. That was, and I agree. I mean, broadband is a utility. It must be available to everyone. The only thing I'll add is that during COVID, Ypsi Schools also was in person for as much as possible. We did not just revert immediately to everybody's online for a really long time. They really explored, the administration really explored creative ways to get kids into, either satellite sort of areas or the main schools safely. And that really worked out really well, because they knew that even with partnering with Comcast and so forth, that it still was a challenge for a lot of students. But yeah, I mean, it just needs to be available to everybody nationwide, high quality, very, very fast internet. Yeah, I want to see that happen.
Thank you. We have another question from Dr. Ron Suarez, and I will direct this one first to Trustee Townsend because I know she's got some expertise in this area. The question is, do you think that real estate investment is antithetical to enabling affordable housing?
That's a good question. I think if the investors understand the community that they're investing in, and that they really want to contribute to making the community more valuable, I think it can be a worthy thing. However, currently what we're experiencing in this market is that is not happening. Rates on home, rental rates and things like that are out of this world. And the main issue that I have is that this community, this county needs to be very proactive in how they partner with certain investors, how they make sure that investors understand the resources that are out there. We can create a win-win opportunity for both the investor and the tenants and or homeowners. And so I just think that is something where I'm really advocating for countywide to make sure that we are providing for affordable housing opportunities for our students and family and the entire county, by making sure that investors know Washtenaw County has a lot of money out there, but we need to do a better job in how we communicate those resources and come up with a systematic program that can benefit both parties and make housing affordable.
Thank you. Trustee Schindler, would you like to add?
I'm not a real estate professional. I am an educator. So, but I do know that I was a single parent living in Ypsilanti with my young boys for a long time, and having affordable housing was essential. And one thing that I just want to say is that it goes back to leadership and listening. And so, you have to listen to the community, and you have to do things that are responsive. What does it take to make a community where people want to stay and that they can stay, and that there are lots of amenities and so forth for people to enjoy. So I think that that's on the leadership of the zoning or whoever, that part I'm not so clear on, to listen and to be responsive, especially to members of the community whose voices are often ignored. I think that's critical.
Maria, I think you may have frozen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the attendees, since Maria's frozen, if there's one question remaining, if you want to raise your hand, I will call on you. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to ask a question? I do not see a raised hand. Therefore, I happen to have a list of the questions that Maria prepared in advance. See, this is an organized place. So I'm going to ask one of Maria's questions, which she also sent to the trustees, candidates, and also to me. So are there particular academic areas, school services, and functions that you have a special interest in, and why? And I think, Trustee Schindler, you are first.
So literacy, everybody is very interested in literacy. We need to make sure that we have a phonics-based sequential structured literacy program in place that's been shown to increase the ability of all students to read, and being able to read is essential. So that's the first thing. I have my own particular interest in sex education. I'm on the Sex Education Advisory Board, making sure that that's inclusive, that trans students, non-binary students, students who are gay, bisexual, anywhere in that LGBTQ umbrella are feeling very supported, but also just in general, kids need to know about their bodies and boundaries and how to stay safe as they move through the world. So I'm very interested in that. And then, I'm a science teacher. I'm a scientist by training, and then I've been a teacher for 20 years. And so, certainly STEM education. But really the literacy and the we all have bodies. Let's learn about our bodies and how they work. Those are my big things.
Thank you so much. Trustee Townsend, same question.
So in regards to academic areas, definitely literacy is a major area of focus for me, and how we continue to build relationships with agencies outside of the school district to support increasing our literacy rates and things such as that. The district has worked very hard to get a curriculum that is designed to increase or do preventions or interventions on literacy issues, as well as a culturally appropriate curriculum that looks at, again, the whole child. I sit on the finance and operations committee of the board. So of course, I'm always looking at school funding opportunities, making sure that we're leveraging ourselves properly financially so that we can sustain the district and to make sure that we can continue to grow. And I'm looking forward to continue to work with local and state legislators to how we can possibly decrease this debt that we have, debt load, so that we can further pay our teachers well as provide additional opportunities for our students to increase academics. And I think it's very important to also state that I'm very interested in working with our universities, Eastern, Concordia, University of Michigan, and how we can continue to bring educators that come through those universities over to our district, because I think it's very important to have local education organizations be the source of our teaching staff as well and support staff.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call this panel to a close because we have another very full panel coming up, but I want to thank both of you for taking the time out of your schedules to speak with this audience and open yourself up to questions from who knows where they might come from. And that takes some courage, and we're very grateful. I'm also grateful to Maria for serving as the moderator. So with that, I will turn to our next panel, which is the Ann Arbor School Board Trustee candidates, and ask Deb Mexicott, who's the moderator for this panel, to take over. Those members of that panel can now open up their videos. I think because there's so many panelists, we have 10 candidates on this panel. It probably is best to keep your microphone muted. That with a lot of microphones open, there's always the danger of background noise, and that can create problems. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Deb Mexicott. And again, I should say thank you also to her. She's also a former school board trustee in Ann Arbor, also school board chair. So she knows whereof she speaks. Deb?
Thank you so much, Eli. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ann Arbor Public Schools Board of Education candidate panel, hosted by the Washtenaw County Democratic Party. I'm Deb Mexicott, and I will be moderating today's panel, and I'm so happy to be here with such a large group of citizens interested in public service. With us today, and please forgive both my cat and my pronunciation, Susan Basquette, Kai Cortina, Jacinda Townsend Giddies, Jamila James, Lena Kaufman, Jeremy Lapham, Rima Mohammed, Susan Ward-Schmidt, Andrew Spencer, and Leslie Wilkins. Welcome. We've invited all trustee candidates to this panel, but not all were able to attend today. The format for this event is as follows. The candidates will give us an opening statement in alphabetical order by last name, which should not exceed 2 minutes. We will have up to 90 seconds to respond to each subsequent question, and you will answer in turn. At 20 seconds before the end of their time, I was supposed to say they will hear a bell, but the bell has been not very hearable. So
like that.
It will be that at 20 seconds. So you can wrap up your answer. And if you're done before your allotted time, that's great. The second indication, Eli, please demonstrate, will indicate your time is up and we'll need to move on. There you go. All right, please be courteous with your time, as we want everyone to have a fair chance to speak, and we don't want to have to mute anyone. And we expect this forum to run a little more than 2 hours, and there will be no closing statements from the candidates. Every candidate will get a chance to answer every question and in alphabetical order, so pay attention to who is before you on the list. You'll have 2 rounds of straight alpha order. After that, I will start the rotation in a different place, down the list by 2. So everyone gets a chance to go first or second. I know from experience what it's like to always have to go first or last on a panel. I will call on you as helpful, but we'll move expeditiously in order. And don't worry, I've got you. So there'll be a number of moderator questions that were supplied to the candidates prior to the panel. We will also be asking several questions submitted by email prior to today, which the candidates have not had a chance to see. And we'll take a few questions from the live audience. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand, or you could also put it in the question and answer box, but we prefer you raise your hand and we will call on you in turn. Please state only your question as we have limited time. I can say without fear of contradiction, we will not be able to get to all the moderator pre-sent or live questions today, but I encourage you in the audience to follow up with the candidates and otherwise inform yourselves further through other campaign events and publications. And now, without further introduction from me, I will ask the candidates to respond to the following opening statement question. I want you to tell us your name, a bit about yourself, and why you are running for a trustee position on the Ann Arbor Board of Education. And we will start with Susan Basket.
Thank you, Deb. Hello, everybody. I'm Susan Basket, and I'm running to continue my 19 years of service, keeping Ann Arbor Public Schools students and staff safe and successful. This election will bring a major turnover at the Board of Education. My persistent hard work, my institutional knowledge of the district, both as a mom, a graduate, and a mom of graduates and a non-graduate, as well as my experience on the school board, is a valuable asset to keep. Voters will be able to cast 4 votes. I ask for 1. I ask that I be reelected to ensure that the board will have a balance of new and established leadership for our district's continued success. A few of my accomplishments include going to court to fight for board's right to prevent the open carry of guns in our schools. This secured the right for all Michigan schools, and reducing the rate of student suspensions and virtually eliminating student expulsions. And of course, funding programs that improve student achievement for all students. The Ann Arbor Public Schools is not a perfect district yet. We're working on it, but we are successful. In a crisis, successful organizations focus on delivering their core mission. Education is our core mission, and as the most experienced school board member, I kept us focused on that. A major transition in leadership can jeopardize an organization's successful momentum. I ask for your vote to ensure that the work of the district continues, grows, and is not stalled or regressed due to the lack of institutional memory or the lack of experienced leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Kai Cortina.
Good morning. I'm Kai Cortina. Let me tell you a bit about myself first. I'm an immigrant scientist, university teacher, and father of 2 kids in Ann Arbor Public Schools. I have 30 years of experience in teaching and doing research in educational psychology, and this is what anchors my thinking about schooling. There are 3 major reasons why I'm running for school board. First, the COVID crisis has disrupted Ann Arbor public school learning more than any other school district in Michigan. Why? Schools were closed for too long. And why was that? Because the school administration and the school board were second-guessing public health experts. They were also ignoring letters signed by several hundred local doctors who strongly encourage reopening schools. I will do everything to make sure that we do not repeat this mistake. Second, as we saw from recent test scores, children in Ann Arbor are dramatically behind in reading and math, in particular minority children and those living in poverty. At a recent school board meeting, the superintendent and her team presented these sobering findings in detail. That was a good start. But we need to do more. We need a stronger plan to help those children who were most affected by the switch to virtual school. Science strongly recommends regular and intense tutoring in this case. I will support any initiative to make this happen and might have one idea or another myself. Third, despite relentless happy talk from the superintendent, many wonderful teachers hated Zoom school so much that they left the profession or opted for early retirement. I cannot blame them, having taught on Zoom myself many times. I would love to work together with the union and the administration to come up with creative ways to restore the ranks of our teaching workforce. Ann Arbor is a great school district, and I look forward to supporting its excellence as a trustee. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacinda Townsend Giddies. And please, do I have that correct?
Actually, it's Gaitis. It's Polish, which no one expects. So
Gaitis. I will do my best. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the Washtenaw County Democrats for having us. As the daughter of a public high school teacher who went on to become one of the people who implemented the Kentucky Education Reform Act, Not only have I long been invested in public education, but I've long understood that powerful positive change can happen quickly when stakeholders are invested. I left Kentucky to get a BA from Harvard, then a JD from Duke, and an MFA from the University of Iowa. I've been a lawyer and a journalist. I'm now a novelist and a professor in the MFA program at the University of Michigan. But one consistent life direction has been my commitment to public service. As a parent, I've served in my children's schools, first as a volunteer, then as a board member at my kids' Montessori, and then when they aged out of Montessori and into the public schools, as an elected member of the Board of Trustees of the Monroe County, this is in Indiana, Community School Corporation, a district comparable in size to AAPS. As a veteran board member, my primary commitments have been preserving academic excellence and increasing equity between schools. While others see these goals as incompatible, I see them as necessary synergy. As a leader, I'm more swayed by data and examples of innovative, effective policy than I am by most strident voices in a room. I'm interested in bringing all voices to the table, particularly those who've not been heard. I'm an advocate for students of color, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and students with special education needs. As a board member, I wrote the resolution that disarmed the SROs in Monroe County schools. And when the Indiana State Legislature passed a bill allowing school districts to join social justice education with curricula, I very quickly wrote and passed our district's resolution. I think that was time. I'm going to put the resolution in chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamila James. And do I have that first name correct, Jamila?
Yes, it's Jamila.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so a little bit about myself. Okay. So, of course, my name is Jamila James. I've lived in Ann Arbor for 21 years. I am a parent. I'm a single parent. I worked nights, went to school during the day to become a nurse. So now I'm a nurse. And the reason why I'm running for school board is because I don't think that we're preparing our children to be adults at 18. I don't think we're taking care of our children as far as teaching them that it's okay to be human. We're not taking care of the whole child. My background is just being a parent. When I first moved to Ann Arbor, I worked at the children's centers at U of M, which taught me about play-based learning. That taught me about taking care of the whole child. And I was very impressed, again, humanizing the children. I'm running because I think that we have a real problem in Ann Arbor. I think that we're really great at patting on our backs about how great we are, but we're not great for all children. I'm someone that wants equity, skilled trades, because everybody's not going to college. I want us to teach our children that it's okay to have emotions and how to cope with them, which comes with social emotional learning and restorative justice. I'm for helping with mental health and having more social workers at school. We talk about the achievement gap. I say there isn't an achievement gap. There's a resource gap. And it's our job to make sure that we start from the bottom up instead of from the top down. Worry about supporting the people that have the most need helps makes us have a stronger foundation. Is that a stop or
20 seconds left.
Okay. So I don't know. I'm here and this is authentic. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Lena Kaufman.
Hi, so excited. I didn't hit me unmute. I'm first of all an AAPS parent of 3 lovely children who are my world. Like all parents, I want the very best for my children and indeed all the children in our community. I'm worried that we cannot endure further years of interrupted learning. It's kind of become a crutch in our district to use Chromebooks and virtual school to replace in-person learning when we face hard challenges. In-person learning in public schools is essential. What people don't know about me is that I started school in the United States not speaking any English at age 10. I could not imagine how difficult my first year in the United States would have been if I had not been in person in school with caring teachers and peers that could help me learn English. Since last school year, I've also had a powerful personal experience. I had a stroke. I lost the ability to read for many months. It taught me something very important that I hadn't realized. If you can't follow along with reading and with all of the apps that our district uses to communicate, for whatever reason, what personal, mental, whatever reasons, as a parent, you can't follow along with your child's learning. As a board member, I would push for transparency, openness, and clear communication in ways that make sense for all parents and invite them into participating in their children's education instead of pushing them out as what is happening now with our adoption of technology.
Thank you. Jeremy Lapham.
Hi, thank you for hosting us today. I'm Jeremy Lapham. I'm a family nurse practitioner, parent, single parent of two boys in the Ann Arbor Public School District at BA and one going into Forsyth. Wish me luck for a new middle schooler. Been in Ann Arbor for 23 years. I'm running because I want to turn my passion for health equity, education, community-based participatory action, and labor activism into policy and practice that will work to improve the quality of education and the quality of working conditions for students and for teachers in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. So in addition to these experiences as a clinician and community leader, labor leader, and a researcher, I bring a great deal of insight from having worked in the schools for the past 6 years or so as a school-based nurse practitioner with a program that's has through U of M that's embedded in the school district. So I've seen a lot of benefit from how engaging with community partners and institutions can have a significant impact on the students and on the teachers in the school district. So as a board member, I would be an advocate for the implementation of high quality research on the issues facing public education and ensuring that the rank and file with educators would be heard, parents are heard, teachers, administrators, and community members. And I do this through programs like the community-based participatory research. I think we should rely less on consultants who have content expertise and more on consultants who can do that kind of expertise from the ground up from the community. I am a public school graduate, went to Charlevoix High School and did the long haul, but didn't do very well in high school, but was successful with good supportive programs through Washtenaw Community College, and eventually gone through and got 2 masters from the University of Michigan. So I'm also on the board of our local labor board and work on a bunch of labor issues in the community. Main issues: closing equity gap, ensuring the Ann Arbor Public Schools prepare students for the future. It looks like I'm out of time. So thanks, Ellie.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to try using this yellow form for 20 seconds remaining and red for out of time. Maybe it'll be a bit easier to follow than.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Rima Mohammed.
So thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very excited to be part of this panel. So on a personal level, so who am I? So I actually am a refugee. I'm a daughter of Palestinian refugees. And it's important to know that about me because our family has struggled throughout the years. My family moved to the US, specifically Cincinnati. So I'm not from Michigan, but close by. The state down there, that we try to ignore. So I'm specifically from, grew up in Cincinnati. When I was 5 years old, I moved over there. My family really struggled. We have lived through financial, social, and emotional struggles, and that includes racism, financial hardship. So I've really lived through that. And honestly, if it wasn't for the public schools, especially the teachers and, the administrators and staff, I would not be here today. They really, my parents did not know the system. They didn't know, what do you do to be, to go into the university. So really, they supported me. And that is one of the major reasons why I want to give back to the public schools and serve the community, especially those that are struggling. On a professional, professionally, I am faculty. I'm clinical associate professor at University of Michigan College of Pharmacy. I've been an educator, clinician, and researcher for almost 16 years. As an educator, I've been really involved with curriculum assessment and design. As a clinician, I see post-ICU patients. I received my doctorate of pharmacy, University of Michigan, or not University of Michigan, University of Cincinnati, and then postgraduate work at U of M. But why I want to run is because I do believe that schools are strongest when we foster community involvement. So that's the biggest thing.
Thank you. Susan Ward-Schmidt.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks to the Washtenaw County Dems for hosting this event. I'm Susan Schmidt, and I was raised in a home where my father, a factory worker, a union member who never finished high school, instilled in his 4 daughters the importance of a high-quality education. My sisters and I attended public school. We graduated from college, some of us with advanced degrees, and 3 of us became teachers. Over the span of my teaching career, I've worked with students of all ages in urban, rural, and suburban public schools in several states, with my last position before retirement at Scarlett Middle School. In those positions, I was also an active union member working to make sure my colleagues and I had the tools we needed to do our job. I have previously served as a member and president of the school board in East Lansing. I've been a parent volunteer for my 2 sons who are now fully grown, and an advocate. Currently, I tutor children and adults that have dyslexia. I've dedicated my life to giving all children the best public education possible and have entered this race because now more than ever, experienced educational leadership is needed on the Ann Arbor School Board. Each child experiences their K-12 education only once in a lifetime, and we need to do everything in our power to make sure their needs are met so they thrive and fulfill academically and personally. Our community entrusts its board members with the job of oversight of how our superintendent empowers those that interface with our children to deliver a high-quality education that is evidence-based. It expects the board to make sound financial decisions, including how best to use the bond money to support the goals of educating children in safe, healthy, and environmentally sustainable facilities. And it expects the board to set policies that help create a learning community where all are valued. Throughout my adult life, I've been effective working with diverse groups of people to identify problems and find solutions to make positive changes in schools and communities. My goal, that as a member of the Ann Arbor School Board, I'll continue that work to help make our school district the best it can be.
Thank you very much. Andrew Spencer.
Thanks very much. Thanks for hosting. My name is Andy Spencer. I live here in Ann Arbor, and I work as a scientist. I study ways to treat untreated diseases. My education includes a bachelor's in chemistry and PhD in biochemistry. I'm running because I'd like to see Ann Arbor Public Schools be a great district for teachers to work in, for all students to learn, and for people to build community. When I was first getting ready to move here, I spent a lot of time in different school scenarios here while I was commuting from California, and really enjoyed getting to know some of the people in Ann Arbor Public Schools. A couple of issues that really nudged me into the race. One that first started making me pay attention was in February 2021, a teacher survey showed that Washtenaw County teachers had lower access at that time to vaccines than any other county in Michigan. The teachers in Washtenaw County were dead last, not because they weren't interested in getting vaccinated, they were, but they came in 40 percentage points below the state average and much lower, more than 40 points below Oakland and Wayne counties. So that kind of shocked me and started making me pay attention. A couple of other issues that nudged me into the race was that when Ann Arbor Public Schools drastically reduced the before and after care that was available for working families and was very slow, in my opinion, to bring back parent volunteers after we were back in-person learning. I was raised by, so both of those issues are things that I will pay a lot of attention to on the board. I was raised by 2 Michigan public high school public school teachers. My dad was a teacher for 16 years and later served as a principal and superintendent. My mom was a speech pathologist and later served as a school principal. My brother taught emotionally impaired kids in Michigan public schools for 10 years and later now serves as a superintendent. And my sister is an instructor at the University of Michigan and is a member of LEO in the Ford School. So my sons are both students in AAPS. I have a 6th grader at Tappan this fall and a 10th grader at Pioneer. My wife and I were raised K through 12 in public schools, and they're very important to our family. We believe they're very important to democracy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the introduction time.
Yep, thank you. Leslie Wilkins.
Hi, I'm Leslie Wilkins, and I'm thrilled to be here this morning. I'm a qualified, calm, compassionate, and thoughtful long-term Ann Arbor public school parent. My kids both started at Carpenter Elementary and kindergarten right down the street from where I've lived for 16 years. My son just graduated from Huron High School's IB diploma program. My daughter will be a junior this year, and I've fiercely supported their involvement in athletics, music, theater, student council, rec and ed camps, all the things. Serving on the Ann Arbor School Board has been on my heart for a long time now. 8 years ago, I attended an informational session, and afterward, a good friend pulled me aside to question my sanity of considering this position with 2 small kids, and suggested that if I really wanted to make a difference in school-related issues, I should get involved with my kids' school PTO. That's exactly what I did, volunteering with elementary school PTO for 2 years, and then the Scarlett Middle School PTO for 5 years, serving as the vice president of the board for 3 years. I really enjoyed the work I did on the PTO boards, advocating for students and teachers. Now I'm excited at the chance to take the next step to serve in a way that impacts students district-wide. I have a bachelor's degrees in music and psychology from U of M, along with an MBA. I've been a manager in marketing and sales at the same company for 13 years. Along with my work with school PTOs, I've served on other nonprofit boards for the past 9 years. So volunteer and work experiences have made me very comfortable within the boardroom environment. I've had lots of success working as part of a team. I ask hard questions, and I work collaboratively to make well-informed decisions. I want to ensure that the district prioritizes success and happiness for all students. I think the top 3 ways that's done is by continuing to deliver an outstanding education that meets the community's expectation for excellence, attracting top-notch educators and retaining the amazing teachers and staff members we have, and prioritizing social emotional learning and mental health resources. I'm running for this position because I want to help all kids thrive.
Thank you so much. So for our next question, we're going to go in exactly the same order. I'll start switching it up after that. I want to encourage the audience to raise their hand if they have a question, or of course, they can also drop it into the question and answer box. And so we're going to start again with Susan Basquette with what are the main strengths of and challenges for the Ann Arbor Public School District? And you have 90 seconds, so it's going to be shorter, and we are going to try and keep to that.
Thank you, Deb. We have many strengths in our district due to our awesome community. So let's start with diversity. We have nearly every measure of diversity that you can imagine in our district, and that's reflected on our Board of Education, which is rare. We have Asians, African Americans, Caucasians, Christians, Jews, Muslims, LGBTQ+. We have it all, and all perspectives are welcomed. We also have a generous community. Our school communities worked hard to address the barriers to academic success, like hunger, housing, and economic instability. And additionally, our students and staff benefit from the bond and sinking funds passed for technology, new buses, new schools, and of course, the repairs of old ones. But last but not least, our quality teachers deliver in the terms of educational options. We have STEAM, we have IB, we have online, we have 5 high schools, each one offering its own flavor in education. We have student-led programs. We have partnerships with our community colleges and our local universities. Our challenge are returning to our buildings safely and keeping them safe. The challenge of being able to garner agreement and compliance with what will keep our schools and our staff safe and healthy and open. Labor shortages, nothing new. We've had them before, and every position is vulnerable, not just childcare. And improving the support of social, emotional, physical health of our students. Even while funding is available, hiring counselors for every school building, which is our goal, continues to be a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Kai Cortina.
I think that we'll have a lot of repetition here. So the strength definitely is the school district is on solid financial footing, thanks to the good stewardship of the superintendent, I might add. We still have amazing teachers, a very diverse workforce, as Susan Basquette also pointed out. We also do have a strong community, which is really rare. That our entire city is built on education. Without education, Ann Arbor wouldn't exist. So not only is that financially, I always feel that the neighborhoods parents are very engaged in the schools. We have a really vibrant school culture, which of course was mainly interrupted through COVID. And this is my major challenge that I see. We need to make sure that all those students who suffered, who didn't reach their learning goals due to the pandemic, we need to immediately, have some remedial structure in place to help them, because what will otherwise happen is that they fall further behind. We definitely need to restore the ranks of the teaching workforce. I think the school district has to become very creative with that, maybe getting teachers out of retirement. We also have to bring back reliable aftercare and before care for in elementary schools. My wife and I, we were both working full time, so we were totally dependent on aftercare. I think this is a scandal that we don't have that back. I understand this is partly due to staffing issues, but this has to be fixed.
Thank you. Jeanice Townsend, guide us.
Thank you. So because I am an academic, my children have actually gone to school in 4 different states now. And I got to say, when I came here, I felt like a huge strength of this school district was its diversity. That being said, I think that turns into a weakness when you have such inequity between schools. And, at the root of all equity problems is basically school segregation. I think we know this. We know that people like to pour money into segregation rather than talking about the inequities. But all the research says that that's what here. So we have a district where we have one elementary school that has 61% of its students in, free reduced lunch status. We have another with 8%. We have a school that has 46% Black and Brown students. And then we have another elementary school that has 11%. So that in one school district to me is unacceptable. We as a country have given up on school integration. I know that. We know it peaked in 1987. It is now at Brown versus Board of Education levels. But that doesn't mean that we here in Washtenaw County have to put up with that and give up on it. We're a progressive place and we're like a blue dot in the state of Michigan, and we need to do better. One area to look at is the way we implement schools of choice. The local interpretation of state law, of course, is up to us on that. And I'll submit that doing it the way we do it allows people once a year to decide that they want to send their children to school with the wealthiest children that they can find. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamila James.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you talk about the strengths and weaknesses of Ann Arbor schools. So one of the strengths of Ann Arbor schools is the diversity in education, meaning how we have the IB program, we have a STEAM program, we have schools like Ann Arbor Open, for better or worse. So it's this whole diversity of different ways, styles of learning and everything, which is really cool and kind of not cool at the same time because everyone doesn't have those opportunities. The biggest problem I find in Ann Arbor Public Schools, honestly, is the lack of equity and the lack of ability for Ann Arbor to admit that they have a problem. We're so busy patting ourselves on the back about how awesome we are. We have all this money, we have all this diversity, we have all of this. But what does it matter if our diversity is cut off at the knees, if it's just an optics thing? So Ann Arbor is very big for our optics, and I have a problem with that. I'm not about how things look what things look like. I'm about how things actually are. So our biggest holdback is our unwillingness to acknowledge the fact that we do have an equity issue, that we do have an issue with racism in Ann Arbor, and that we are our unwillingness to be uncomfortable and actually fix the things instead of just pretending like they don't exist. But I love Ann Arbor. I'm from Detroit schools. All this money here and all these opportunities here is unreal. It's just unfortunate that you have to be on a certain level to be able to take advantage of it.
Thank you. Lena Kaufman.
Because of public bond funding and our supportive community, I would say that our community is our strength. We have resources other public school districts do not have because of where we are located. We also have experts in our community. Ann Arbor consistently ranks as one of the most educated communities in the United States. The challenge I see us facing in recent years is we've had a big drop in enrollment, and we've had issues with students not performing as well on their standardized tests, indicating the impact of the long-term virtual schooling. But most of all, I think we have an organizational culture problem within Ann Arbor Public Schools. AAPS has a culture of silence, one board member said recently. In challenging times like this pandemic, the district has been reluctant to listen to experts such as physicians in our community. Indeed, even teachers have had challenges speaking out on issues that they see. If I was elected to the board, I would reach across the table in the boardroom and speak and seek allies for a more open and transparent approach to leadership in Ann Arbor Public Schools.
Thank you. Jeremy Lapham.
Sure. So, we have a supportive, well-resourced, highly educated community that supports public education as evidenced by the bond. The big challenges we face are similar to what other districts are facing across the United States. Resource deficits and equity in resources. So we need measures to enhance compensation for staffing and education profession and recruitment and attention, including financing retirement benefits. They shouldn't be at the harm. Increase per pupil allowances with weighted funding for students with greater need, like special education and at-risk students. Then we have the issue of the teacher burnout and teacher shortage challenge. So issues like low wages, but also having more flexible schedules and alternative models like year-round schooling, ability for teachers to teach in groups. A lot of these problems we have were just exacerbated by the pandemic, not caused by them. So I would support increasing pay for teachers, substitutes, and support staff, and encouraging the superintendent to work with labor to increase expenditures to combat teacher burnout. And then with respect to equity, we have a lot of issues that people have talked about. I agree with all of them. I would want to implement quantitative measures of equity. So looking at gaps in performance between highest and lowest achieving students, looking at percentage of students from the lowest quartile of SES who perform at the highest levels of achievement, see what makes them successful. And then look at things like the percentage of low performing students, the variance in students in performance by socioeconomic status. Look at clear metrics on how we're measuring equity and outcomes. Thanks.
Thank you. Rima Mohammed.
So I see a lot of strengths that AAPS has, and I echo a lot that has been said previously, such as diversity of people and experiences and expertise, strong teachers, staff, strong academics. I think, having a diversity of people brings different representation and perspectives. And then the teachers are the strong advocates for our children. So we need to ensure that we do everything for them as well. But the challenges facing AAPS are around issues surrounding diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, transparency, lack of community engagement, and then, of course, looking at resource and the curriculum as a whole. And some of the things, of course, if some of my goals to hopefully address some of these key areas include fostering community input and discussions at all levels. And that doesn't just include, the administrators or a small committee. It really has to be a voice of the entire community. And that includes students, alumni, families, teachers, community partners, looking at local officials as well. Analyze and addressing gaps in learning and achievement to ensure consistency in education throughout the district is crucial. I am all about looking at the data, analyzing DEIA needs and implementing sustainable interventions to ensure that they're addressed, and then ensure open communication, transparency, and inclusiveness.
Thank you. Susan Ward-Schmidt.
Yes, well, some great comments from many of the other candidates on the panel. I see the strengths. I've taught in a lot of school districts. And as someone else said, one of the big strengths here is our parent community and our community at large. parent involvement really makes a big difference in schools. And we can tell by, our community at large passing such a huge bond and entrusting that money to us to do good with it, that I think the larger community values education and also supports this district. And I think that is a huge strength. I also see a strong collaborative spirit among staff as they're working to educate the children in this district. And I saw that firsthand as a teacher. And I believe teachers have adequate resources. We could do better to do their job, but I think I think teachers do have a lot of good resources. As far as weaknesses, I look at weaknesses more as an opportunity for growth. I think we, like many districts, have a continual challenge to how best to communicate with our community at large and our school community so that they understand how and why decisions were made. I think we need to make sure there are better collaborative relationships between administration, building leadership, and teachers. And I think I have a big concern about the consistency of literacy instruction, especially in the lower grades, and whether it's evidence-based and grounded in peer-reviewed research. So those are my strengths and weaknesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Spencer.
The main strengths I see here in Ann Arbor are, one, the broad community commitment to the idea of public education. I think you see that reflected by all these people that are here, volunteering to run. We also have sufficient financial resources as a community to make it possible for our schools to be a great place to work, to learn, and to connect as a community. And I think also the expected growth of the district over the next 10 to 20 years is really great. Some challenges I see are making sure that the promise of what's possible reaches all of our students. I'd like to see the district find ways to make PTO funding and PTO-like funding more equitable across schools because it's quite uneven. I'd like to see more transparency from the district when it comes to the types of experts that are advising the leadership and the board, both with regard to education and with regard to public health measures. And then another area I think where we've seen some improvement over the last 10 years, but still have work to do is to see some improvement on reductions in suspensions and expulsions. As Trustee Basket said, expulsions have almost gone away. Suspensions are still unevenly observed by or impacting different groups of students. And those missed days really matter both for resource and for achievement. So those are my strengths and weaknesses.
Thank you so much. Leslie Wilkins.
Our main strengths are also our biggest challenges. We're coming up with a lot of the same things here. One main strength, as Jamila talked about, is the variety of quality opportunities available for our students. There's as many different programs and ways to earn a diploma as there are races and nationalities in our school district. But the challenge that comes with that is funding. Public schools are receiving less and less funding each year. That's particularly detrimental when everything from classroom supplies to employee health benefits is getting increasingly expensive. Setting and then overseeing a budget with shrinking funds that still maintains all the important programs our students need to thrive is a big challenge. Another main strength is our exceptional educators. Our teachers truly care about the happiness and success of each of their students. My kids' teachers have attended their evening dance recitals and weekend sports events, even after they no longer had them in class. Most educators spend a good portion of their summer vacation doing research, training, and shopping for the upcoming year. But the challenge is that our teachers and staff aren't getting the support they need to ensure that every student is thriving. The district needs to find ways to be more competitive, to retain the amazing teachers we have and keep them from burning out or going elsewhere. And our top-notch educators need to know they'll be trusted to do their job in ways they know are best for students.
Thank you. As we move on to the next question, I will be adjusting the start of the order, but the order will remain the same. So the question is, the last several years of the pandemic have been a challenge for everyone, including the stakeholders in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. As we look into the future, what important lessons have we learned from the district's pandemic response? And I'm going to start with Jeanice Townsend. Guide us.
Thank you. Great question. So one of the more shocking things we learned during the pandemic, I think, is that science can be politicized. But another lesson of the pandemic that particularly pertains to the AAPS response is that we've become a country of people who feel very free to ignore the hardships of others. And when you twin that with the fact that during the pandemic, the schools became a hotspot for political attack, in part because the school board meetings were on Zoom. And I used to get texts from constituents afterwards saying like they liked my lipstick, which was great. But you also have these, rabid people watching the school board meeting who think the schools are out to politicize their children, a group of people who doesn't even know what CRT is, but, they're going to show up to talk about what they think they know. So that's one lesson, that we're being watched and held accountable as we should be. But to get back to that first set of lessons, I think we learned that as school board members, we ought to be listening to data and research. Also, we need to listen to parents. We need to listen to the needs of the community and advocate for them rather than sitting on high, issuing edicts or rubber stamping everything a superintendent offers. And finally, I'll offer you a little story I heard. It was like kind of horrifying that this was a group of 7th graders. They came back from the pandemic and they were playing Duck, Duck, Goose, which I think is an illustration of just how much they lost, not only academically, but socially. And so we have always needed more mental health counselors, more counselors, period, in our schools. But post-pandemic, we're dealing with a group of children who have basically lost like a year and a half of their social emotional development in a lot of ways. So we need to really shore up our mental health services in schools.
Thank you. Jamila James.
Thank you. Let's look forward to part of the lesson we learned. Part of the lesson that we learned during the pandemic, I feel, is that it really illustrated the inequities in our school. It also really illustrated how we do not take care of the whole child, and how important it is that we support each other starting from the bottom up. You're going to continue hearing me say that, from the bottom up. One of the things that I found very interesting is the fact that during the pandemic, where everyone was talking about everybody needs to go back to school, which I agree, school is very important, being able to do the social interactions. No one was focusing on the kids that really needed it, like the kids with the 504s or IEPs. Those were the ones that really, really needed to be in, because they need help with the education aspect of it. I also feel like we illustrated like all the people that didn't get the support they needed on the IEPs. So I think that we have to, it really illustrated the fact that we have a lot of work to do to support our whole child, all our children, emotionally and mentally. So a lot of parents were really concerned about the mental health of having to wear masks and not being in school, which there are valid things, but there are also things such as the people that weren't getting food because they weren't going to school.
Thank you so much. Your time is up. So we're going to move on to Elena Kaufman. Please unmute.
Sorry. For me, I learned many lessons coming out of the pandemic. One of the biggest ones for me, I think, is how deeply connected we all are across our communities and state. Making decisions about public schools cannot be made just looking at what's going to happen inside the public school. What happens to the families? What happens to the children when you close the schools? Where do they go? How are they impacted? And some may do fine, and some, like Jamila said, need more support. We need to pay attention to the warnings of experts and parents in our community when we're making decisions. They can help inform us. Now, 2 years later, we have seen the full impact of student mental health, learning progress, enrollment, and teacher burnout. We've also seen the broad negative impact on women's workforce participation and some of the greatest support to date for charter schools and giving parents tax dollars for private schools. If I can tell a quick story, I was volunteering.
20 seconds.
I was volunteering outside the election, And I saw a mom with 3 kids that I know well. And she came up and I ran over to her with my flyers to tell her about who to vote for. And she said, I'm not voting in the Democratic Party. I'm voting in the Republican one.
Thank you. Jeremy Lapham.
Sure. So as a single parent who worked in healthcare, like I've really experienced a lot of challenges with the schools closing down, everything from before and after care. But I also really leveled with the teachers and recognized that the course we were already on was just a shortened timeline, and the pandemic shortened the timeline, and things like lack of support from policymakers and politicians was more evident. The excessive workload that teachers have is particularly evident. Lack of respect for the profession is evidenced by teachers going off, or parents going off at school board meetings or at teachers, especially in their general frustration. And also recognizing there's better salaries in other fields. And, these are big problems. We are facing a teacher burnout crisis, and similar to nursing, these are significant, essential features of our society. We need teachers, we need nurses to help our society function and run, but we don't value them enough as a society in terms of wages, flexibility, and even just giving people a benefit of the doubt that they're doing the best that they can. So I know a lot of people in the profession are looking at retiring. I think 3 in 10 only would recommend the field of teaching. So we really need to support our teachers and support policies that support teachers having new strategies in the classroom, being able to have better flexibility, like year-round school or group teaching assignments where they can work with students and lighten their workload. I think I'm out of time, so thank you.
Thank you. Rima Mohammed.
So I echo what Jeremy has said about how the pandemic has impacted our family. We're both healthcare workers. I primarily see right now more long COVID. My husband is an infectious disease, so it definitely has impacted us. And some of the tough decisions that were made, such as childcare and some of the like in-person decisions and things like that has impacted us. But lessons learned, there were important lessons. First, what I've noticed is it's crucial that we do foster community input and discussions at all levels. And it should not be based on surveys and open comments at board meetings with no response that I have seen. There must be true engagement of all members, and that includes teachers, staff, students, alumni, community partners such as University of Michigan and others, as well as families and administration. Second, we have to improve transparency. We have to not only share the decisions, but we also need to share the response and the reasons of the decisions, even though many may not agree with them. The decisions are also not static. They need to be reevaluated, reassessed, and changed based on the data. And then really addressing issues around DEIA. And the pandemic brought to light the education and resources gaps and learning disparities, especially in people of color, refugees, and other underrepresented populations. And this was happening way before the pandemic. So those are the big things.
Thank you. Susan Ward-Schmidt. Please unmute.
Sorry about that. I think we have to remember that none of us had any experience with the upheavals the pandemic occurred that happened. People were trying to make the best decisions they could with the information they had. For the health of our district, first of all, I hope we can use our experiences to inform future practice and that it doesn't keep us separated into camps. I also think we need to improve transparency, as the last panelist said, about decision-making. That period of virtual schooling was so hard for teachers who were trained to work in person with children. And when they moved to a virtual delivery system, which moved very quickly, it was like somebody flipped a switch and said, become a virtual teacher. They firsthand saw the challenges their learners were having and how difficult it was to meet each child's needs. I think it showed that, especially for our early grades, virtual learning is not ideal. So I think as we move forward and we come back to in-person and we think about how do we balance the whole concept of screen time learning and face-to-face collaborative learning, and the value of interacting with fellow human beings in the learning process. So I think that should really be looked at, because even though we're in person, there's still so much screen time. And in our early grades, I'm not sure that that's an ideal situation for children. Thanks.
Thank you. Leslie Wilkins.
What about Mr. Spencer?
Oh, my apologies. Andy Spencer.
Thank you, Leslie.
See, I so appreciate you know your order.
Regarding, you taught us well. Regarding the pandemic, I hold a lot of grace in my heart for public officials who had to make tough decisions in a constantly and rapidly changing environment. The future of Ann Arbor Public Schools will include the virus that causes COVID-19 as it comes and goes in waves for many years. Certainly during my entire kids' careers at AAPS, it will be with us. I think some of the major investments that AAPS made has been lost in the community discussion. It all gets back to masks, because masks you can see. You can't see if someone's vaccinated. What you can't see is the amazing air quality that we have in our schools, which came not by accident, but by investment and measurements and improvements where measurements were below what they needed to be. So as we move forward, I think, generally kids need to be together. They need friends, classmates, and teachers to enrich their lives. Just a quick anecdote, it's been tough on local teens. My wife is a physician in adolescent medicine at the University of Michigan. And at one point during the pandemic, their inpatient flow was 3 times higher than it was before the pandemic. A lot of people are struggling. It's not a coincidence that they happen to be having an uptick in struggling during the pandemic. And I think in particular, girls are even more adversely affected than boys when their existence gets reduced to screens too much of the time.
Thank you. And now, Leslie Wilkins.
Well, we certainly learned that parents have strong and varying opinions about how to respond to a pandemic. But that brought to light the importance of delivering a quality education to all students, not just our traditional learners. We're going to have to do some catch up. After so much remote learning, our students' knowledge, especially in reading and math, has dropped below the levels needed for them to be career and college ready. At the same time, there are studies coming out now that show that for some students, those who were struggling with bullying or anxiety, for example, remote learning gave them an opportunity to thrive. We need to learn how to make those students' experiences more optimal as we return to in-person learning. And while we're not fans of remote learning at my house, I supported our district's decisions to prioritize the health of the whole community, which in turn protected the physical and mental health of our students and staff. As one of the largest school districts in the state, I was glad to see Ann Arbor Public Schools set the high bar of erring on the side of caution, rather than simply following what other districts did. Another thing many stakeholders learned, though the board administration certainly already knew, was just how much our students rely on schools for food. I was so impressed with how quickly and efficiently the food distribution got set up, and I know many, many families who benefited.
Thank you. Susan Basket.
Thank you. All of you brought to light a lot of learnings. Let me kind of summarize the importance of relationships and a community. That was a big lesson we learned. I believe in establish those relationships before you need them. And as I listened to some parents pulling their hair out saying, I don't know how other people do it, I have resources. The one thing I wanted to ask is, did you ask anybody who had fewer resources? How are they managing? Because we saw families manage as they always had to manage. We've had relationships with those families versus, with them identifying their needs in our school community again, over the time, beyond the pandemic, before, and will continue to offer the support and the aid in them working to resolve the issues themselves. We learned that helping deliver those services, as others have mentioned, outside of the school was very important, and we did it. Remember, we had people who would have been without a jobs and income had we not problem solved. Okay, you know what? The children need food. So the food workers continued to work. The bus drivers turned into delivery people. And in some cases, hotspots, if you will. What we also learned was we have now an infrastructure. We've created infrastructure that can be activated in light of a crisis. The new variants are coming, and we do have the fear of monkeypox. So believe me, we've invested a lot, and a lot of that can be used in the future for the good of all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Kai Cortina.
For me, the bottom line, the experience, the most important lesson is, as a scientist and a father, you cannot replace in-person classroom teaching with Chromebooks, apps, and digital libraries. This is a hard to stomach fact, but the trend to move to more electronic teaching is a mistake. Exciting, eye-opening learning happens in real classrooms with well-trained teachers who also address, to respond to Leslie Wilkins' point, yes, there happens bullying, social problems happen in classroom and they have to be dealt with. This is social learning happens. This cannot be virtual, period. It should be a top priority, and I say this again as a father and as a scientist. Virtual learning is exhausting for everybody, for the students, the teachers, and of course also the parents. They have to do more heavy lifting in the process than they signed up for. In particular, elementary schools, think about this first and second graders. The parents is basically the co-teacher in front of a screen. This is just, for me, unacceptable, and we should avoid this, at best we can. Unless public health officials, again, I disagree with some people on the panel here, I follow the public health officials because these are the experts. The school district and the school board members are not experts in public health. So I follow the science and not, hearsay. I think this is important that we come back to, to the expertise we have and listen to others where it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next two questions are from amongst those we received from the public prior today. And we are again adjusting the order, and we will start with Lena Kaufman. And the question is, please state any past or current affiliation with the A2R2 Reasonable Return Group.
Oh, well, I founded it. And the reason I founded it was because, as I alluded to in my opening comments, I started when I was 10 years old, I started public school, not speaking any English. I know that many kids in our district are in a similar position. Kids need to be in school with their teachers and their peers. I'm also from Swedish background. My cousins were in Sweden throughout the pandemic. Their kids, as many people who follow the news know, the schools opened in Sweden. And they studied it, they researched it. They found that schools were low-risk environments, and they haven't had the learning loss that other places have. I was nervous. I know my cousin's kids well. I thought about them all the time when they were in school, but everything was fine. And I wanted us in Ann Arbor to take a research and evidence-based look at whether schools should be open and closed, and take into account the whole risk. If we close schools, what happens to the children? What happens to the families? What happens to the ability of women to work? What happens to healthcare workers like Jeremy that, will have to put their kids in private schools in order to do their job, which we need them to do to deal with the pandemic? We're not like this island that's where decisions are made separate from the rest of society. Schools are part of society. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Lapham.
Sure, I just want to clarify, my students stayed in Ann Arbor public schools throughout the pandemic. So just to,
sorry,
yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah, so for me, the question about A2R2, I jumped on board initially with the concept of all the things of, recognizing that there's problems with equity, and I had donated, but since got disappointed with the sort of public direction the group had gone towards, and have no longer seeking their endorsement or identified as being affiliated with them. My concerns about school closure are similar to what others have addressed, and it's mostly about equity, that it disproportionately impacts people, and there were evidence of schools being able to do so openly. And I wanted to see a opportunity for teachers who wanted to teach in person who felt safe, who met the criteria for wanting to be there, were able to. And for students and parents who wanted to stay home or teach, and teachers who wanted to teach from home, to have that opportunity too. We had an all or nothing system. I was hoping that we would have saw something in between. And I think at the time, there was a lot of fast moving information. Public health information was changing rapidly, and public perceptions were changing rapidly. So it was a real challenge. But yeah, I did donate at one point in time, but I no longer supported the direction, particularly the anti-masking and like open schools at no cost. So thanks.
Thank you. Rima Mohammed.
Yeah, so I echo what Jeremy has said. Initially, especially with the beginning of the pandemic, I know there was a lot of tough decisions. There was the lack of transparency. I really do believe in in-person learning, but of course, I've had to actually make some of these decisions at one of the Islamic school here, where there is the science and I am a science-based person, very intertwined with COVID and COVID-19 and, all of that. But we also have to really think about it's a balance. There is also other factors that we need to consider. And, although, I'm an advocate for in-person learning, I think it's crucial. Over the time with A2R2, I didn't really agree with their approach. It didn't feel very balanced at times. There were, a little bit more, especially with the messaging, it seemed very one-sided. You really have to look and represent all members of the community when making the decision. I do not seek their endorsement. I do not seek any donations. I have no affiliation with that group. And that's my stance.
Thank you. Susan Ward Schmidt.
I have had no affiliation with that group. I'll give you a short answer.
Thank you. Andy Spencer.
Also no affiliation.
Thank you. Leslie Wilkins.
I'll keep it short. No affiliation.
Susan Bascat.
No affiliation, no love, no support, just been a target of their vicious attacks.
Kai Cortina.
I will never distance myself from a grassroots initiative, local initiative. The hypocrisy here in the room, we always want democracy, want civil engagement of people. This is what started A2R2. I drove down on Stadium where my school was closed for my daughter. Tappan was on the side, frolicking students at St. Francis. What was wrong with this picture? This is what all this started. Parents were upset what the Ann Arbor School District was deciding against medical advice to keep the schools closed. There was a lot of anger that basically A2R2 channeled. And of course, it was a grassroots, and it still is a grassroots group from people with very different political opinions and have also different takes on school closing. I don't understand why all of a sudden everybody wants to distance themselves from it. I'm happy to see community engagement. And this is what I think Lena Kaufman also explained, how this all got started.
Thank you. Jacinda Townsend, guide us.
I have also never had anything to do with A2R2 whatsoever.
Jamila James.
When A2R2 first began, someone spoke to me about it. It was about children getting back into school, so I completely supported it. It was till I looked deeper and things kind of turned toxic for it, that it became problematic. That being said, I have reached out to A2R2 because I want to know what it is that they value about their kids. It's important that we listen to all parents, even those that we don't agree with. You never know what you're going to learn from that perspective. And I wanted to know what were their expectations and what is it that they value this stuff, because it's important that we get everybody voices. That being said, I'm not associated with it. It seems I get the spirit or idea behind it initially, but it just seemed too toxic as things turned, and then it seemed to be very productive.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, when you're not answering questions, please keep your screen on mute. So our next question also came from the public before this forum. The AAPS before school and after school care program has long been an essential service for families. There's a multi-point here. So are you committed to rebuilding the before and after care program? What do you see as the key challenges for restoring these services? And what proposals do you have for getting them up and running as soon as possible? And we will again shift the order and start with Rima Mohammed.
So obviously, as I said before, being two healthcare workers that are essential to, especially with the COVID-19 response, we definitely felt the stressors when childcare was pretty much eliminated. I know I heard some new, especially the last board meeting, that they are going to rebuild this. But of course, the pandemic again brought to light some of the issues that have been happening probably well before the pandemic. It only exacerbated this. So what is crucial that we do need to look at the child care program structure to make sure that it is sustainable and that it is equitable, so that we do make sure that places that need it, need it. We need to prioritize, those of need and underrepresented groups that really, really depend. And just to share with you an example that was very eye-opening during the pandemic, when childcare and when things were virtual all year, I remember going to a place where I saw this young African-American woman, and she had 3 little kids with her that were really trying to do virtual learning. She was at work. She was working. And this is one example of many examples how, the decisions the school has made, and especially with before and after school care, has impacted people of color and the underrepresented groups. So we really have to look at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Ward-Schmidt.
I absolutely support building back better, as us Democrats like to use that expression, the child care program. I utilized the child care program when I was a teacher in Lansing. And I think that it's not only important for the families, but it's important for the safety of the children. I saw when I taught in Lansing schools for many years that my children that struggle with poverty, whose parents didn't get off work at the time that they got off school, many of them ended up in a latchkey situation, which just opened a can of worms to all kinds of other problems. And I saw that. I taught at all levels in Lansing, so I saw it with middle schoolers particularly. I think the challenge we're going to have, will continue to have, as restaurants are having, as Kroger's is having, as everybody's having, is trying to make sure that we can staff. And so I think when asked about a proposal, I think we have to have a very deliberate strategy of how we're going to find staff, quality staff, to be able to make those programs able to grow. But I'm completely on board with trying to expand those and make sure everyone who needs it has access, and that the funding, the pricing for families is commensurate with what they can afford.
Thank you. Andy Spencer.
As I stated early on, I think childcare is high priority for me if I were to serve on the board. I would echo the challenge of staffing. I think that will be a difficult thing, made more difficult by the fact that we took something away and now we're trying to put it back. And so that lack of momentum and lack of consistency, I think, will be a challenge. I think we're going to need some help from outside the district to make certain things possible that aren't. I think it would be very interesting to evaluate whether a parent co-op model might be viable across the district. It would have to be something, if we did implement it. By that, I mean, parents contributing time to spend at these at the schools in before and after care. I work full-time, so does my wife, but we can peel off a certain number of days. There are certification requirements, though, that would need to be relaxed, and there's a lot of training that would need to be done to make sure that people could do it. But I do think it's worth exploring in a formal way at the district level. We would need help from the state, I think, but I've seen that work in other states, and I think it could really make a big difference here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Leslie Wilkins.
I am very committed to restoring the before school and after school childcare program. I was completely dependent on it when my kids were small. And I was so thankful that when it was removed, my kids were teenagers and I didn't have to deal with that problem as a single mom working outside the home full time. I just don't know. I don't know how people did it. I do think one of the challenges is staffing, and also what another few of the candidates have touched on, maybe a rethinking or restructuring. In the past, the child care program has been an enrichment program. It isn't just childcare. It isn't just babysitting. It's been certified teachers helping kids with homework, doing extra tutoring, bringing especially reading and literacy experts in to work with those kids after school, get them the extra help they need. And then when it came down to pandemic time, we just needed someone to watch our kids so we could keep going to work. So there might be some thinking outside the box, restructuring, solutions that we could look into that way to get it back and get it restored.
Thank you. Susan Bascat.
Thank you. Childhood's definitely important, and I know it personally. I was a child provider in the community, and I know how important childcare is. So when we as a district were facing all of these labor shortages and illnesses, it was, we cannot continue to say we will do this if we can't. So we early said we can't promise this. We can't keep this promise. So yes, we're committed. We've been committed. We've said that as a district. Anyone can find the presentation out there. We've increased pay. We have bonuses. We've restructured the job, the whole 9 yards. The problem is labor. So yes, we do look outside the school building as well. Again, having been a private provider, I looked at the neighborhoods in the community, but found out some homeowner associations don't allow home-based childcare within walking distance of our district. So we need to look at our community and help us in reevaluating that. It's childcare. It's a needed resource, as we've said. It could be grown within our community, yet there are barriers there. The need will always exceed the availability. This is the real world. Even with all of the childcare centers opened at our buildings, it was never enough. It was never enough. The need is just too great. It is a societal issue. Even when my son, I went to, again, outside of childcare, went to the office, it was still less expensive for me to use a private childcare provider than what we were providing in the schools, even with support. So thank you.
Thank you. Kai Cortina.
I agree with Susan Schmidt. Bring back better. My wife and I, we were dependent on aftercare for a total of 9 years for both our kids at Allen Elementary, and we have seen quite some turnover of personnel. So the problem, as Rima Mohammed was pointing out earlier, started before the pandemic. And let's face it, we need to pay them well, because that's what we heard from the turnover. I think we had 4 or 5 different people every other year. We got new childcare takers in, or aftercare teachers, and they all sang the same song, that the payment is bad. And I'm a union person. I want people to really make a living when they work full time. So that's a hard fact. And so the staffing issue boils down to money, and we have to take some money in our hands. Sorry, that's a simple answer.
Thank you. Jacinda Townsend, guide us.
Thank you. So I am a happily and very intentionally single parent. And that's my biggest political identity, actually. And it gives me kind of a perspective that a lot of other people don't have. I will say I'm a very fortunate single parent because I work in the arts. So I had flex time during the pandemic, as always. But I can tell you that while it is true that this is a problem that did exist during the before the pandemic, and it is a societal problem, that does not mean that schools don't need to try to help solve it. I think one thing we learned during the pandemic is that schools are pretty much there for wraparound social services because all of our other safety nets are falling, ripping apart. And so this is something I'm really committed to. I love your idea about parent co-ops, Andy, but single parents always get the raw end of the deal in any parent co-op because the people with the extra parents can just split that work. So I'm not sure how workable that would be for someone who's in a situation, where they're the only working parent. Thank you.
Jamila James.
So I am absolutely, completely committed to having before and after school care. It is so vital. As a single parent, I have to tell you that I wouldn't be able to do the things that I've done throughout my life, or even provide the opportunities that for my children if I didn't have before and after school care. I'm a firm believer that within this district and within life, if there's a will, there's a way. We have a lot of money here, but it's not just about money. It's also about rethinking the box. Before the pandemic, people it was kind of taken for granted. How is that for those, especially those that didn't need it? I think that if we thought about engaging our community, for example, we have the University of Michigan here, we have Eastern here, we have people that's going to school to be psychologists, psychiatrists, teachers, all these students. Why can't we partner with these universities and have them staff our after school care? And we wouldn't have to worry so much about money. I'm all about, I also believe no one should ever work 40 hours and not be able to survive. I think that's BS. But that being said, there are other ways besides money of getting things done. So I see my time is running out, try to talk fast, but absolutely support it. It is needed. It is a need, not a want, especially for a lot of families here in our community.
Thank you. Lena Kaufman.
I so agree with what the other panelists have said, the other candidates. It is essential. My husband and I, by the time our last child entered first grade kindergarten, we were skating on financial fumes because so much of our income had been going to childcare. Having reliable after-school care is simply essential for some people to be able to work to support their families. Other districts around us are making this work. This includes Ypsilanti Community Schools that has so many more challenges than we do. They have a great program that puts childcare in all their public schools. We need to sort of let go of the idea that maybe we have to solve this alone. Ann Arbor Public Schools tends to sort of close the walls around itself and say, we can fix this ourselves. We have private childcare providers, and I know that there's some reasons some people don't want more private childcare providers within the public schools, but if we can't deliver the childcare, we could expand our private childcare provider programs. We could partner with the universities. We need to look at all solutions, and we need to accept the money from the state when it's offered.
Thank you. Jeremy Lapham.
Sure. I've actually been doing tangible work on this with Kat Hadley, Liz Lynn, Percy Brown, All Campus Labor Council, the HVLF, on getting increased wages for the workers in these programs, and also working within the community to encourage zoning changes so we can get more people, get those restrictions gone. As in addition to supporting the Tri-Share program, which would induce demand. You can look up Tri-Share program. It's a share system. This was a problem before the pandemic. It's a longstanding crisis. These programs not only make full employment possible for people, that's one of the key things, is both for the workers and for the people who need these programs. And unfortunately, for women of color, low-income families, these challenges are even more difficult with these programs closing. They just close them without an alternative plan in place. And that was the most frustrating thing about it. things I would do, I would engage a group of stakeholders to look at the challenges of opening and reopening the Rec Ed programs and the SAC programs. I would ensure that we are looking at all options, including allowing like programs like Bright Futures, who have offered to come into our schools, the opportunity to come in. And I would question why we declined the American Rescue Plan dollars offered by the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners to subsidize salary and benefits for workers in these programs. So I would look at all these opportunities to get these programs up and running again, in addition to the work I've already done. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question submitted from our live audience, and it is as follows, and then I'll tell you who starts. For AAPS candidates, through the pandemic, AAPS has become a, quote, one-to-one district, meaning there are personal computing devices for every student. However, there's been very little discussion, especially at the elementary level, of how much learning is taking place on the devices while in the classroom. Can the candidates discuss how much learning they think is appropriate to be on devices during elementary school and their willingness to have a study and public discussion about what is actually happening in the classroom on devices? And we will begin with Andy Spencer.
Thank you. I think when you ask what's the level of appropriate, screen time to teach kids, we have to ask educators that, and we have a lot of really good educators in the classroom. My sense as a parent is that less is more. Less screen time is more for younger kids in particular. I've seen schools, not Ann Arbor specifically, but I've seen schools where my kids have been students in the past where there was an effort we've got to get every kid an iPad because they have to learn how to use the technology. It doesn't take any real training to learn how to use an iPad. You kind of take it out of the box, you open it up, and the kids can figure it out. So I don't think we should use it for technology's sake. I think we need to ask educators. I'm confident that our educators and our educational leadership will use best practices and research-based recommendations for what level of that sort of thing is appropriate to teach kids.
Thank you. Leslie Wilkins.
I agree that the best experts to go to for how much screen time is appropriate is to go to the educators, and we have lots of educators and experts that can tell us that. I'm a little worried about the part of the question. I think there was part of the question about measuring and how that comes into play. And the go-to way of measuring academic achievement right now is standardized testing, which we don't need any more of, and it needs to be revamped into a more equitable system and a system that doesn't take so much time away from educators doing what they want to do in their classrooms. So I'm veering away from the question a little bit, but that's my piece on that.
Thank you. Susan Bascat.
Thank you. I guess I have more questions than answers here. I am not an educator. I don't develop a curriculum with an iPad in mind. And I would not say that any educator in our district uses the iPad or the technology as their full and only source of delivering education. So I challenge that. How much is too much? I mean, it really depends on your personal need as a parent. What would you determine? Depends on the age of your child. Would we not expect the older kids to probably have to do more research and preparing their reports and just doing their college search to be able to have more time that's appropriate for screen time? Also, remember that our voters supported our technology, and our technology is more than one-on-one, if you will. It is important that our children know how to use the technology. And I do challenge the statement that anyone can learn how to use an iPad to take it out of the box. Hey, some families never had the box to begin with. This was the public schools are offering the tools for them to compete successfully in the real world. So again, I apologize. I don't have all the answers. I don't know how much is appropriate. I will welcome any type of learning on the appropriateness of it, but that's more for the educators. That's not me as a board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Kai Cortina.
Yes, it's the educators that have to decide, and on what grounds do they decide that? The biggest problem of the devices is not the technology itself. It's the risk of social isolation. Learning is a very social experience in schools. So if I send the kids home with an iPad or whatever the device is, and basically says, you do this on your own, this is something where from a pedagogical perspective, we have a problem. So yes, the educators have to balance what is a good use of of electronic devices, simply because they're here to stay and the kids will have them anyway. So yes, teachers have to be creative in trying to take advantage of it, because for some kids, they love to use those devices and are willing to use them for their homework, and there's nothing wrong about that. But it cannot be replacing the social interaction that we all think and know that is where learning happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacinda Townsend, guide us.
Thank you. So occupational hazard, I'm going to tell you guys a story. When we moved here, I had a child who was doing math 2 grade levels ahead. She was placed into a math class that was taught only online. We are now this summer, I am having to teach her grade level math. You know, I know people get gaga over technology. People love technology, but all the money that we're spending on that needs to be poured into teacher salaries, because that child, what that child needed was a teacher. That child did not need a Chromebook. That child did not need Algebra 1A via technology. So that's my stance on that. I mean, I think it's lovely that, you know, we've decided somehow that this is STEM education, to just throw an iPad at a kid. That's not STEM education. That's a lot of things. It's a shortcut for a lot of things, but I would say it's not really working that well.
Thank you. Jamila James.
Could you please repeat the question?
Of course. And let me just get back to it, because I had rotated to the next question. So just give me a moment. AAPS has become a one-to-one district, meaning there are personal computing devices for every student. However, there's been very little discussion, especially at the elementary level, of how much learning is taking place on the devices while in the classroom. Can the candidates discuss how much learning they think is appropriate to be on devices during elementary school, and their level of willingness to have a study and public discussion about what is actually happening in the classroom on devices?
Okay. So I'm from that TV generation. So we're talking about screen learning, we're talking about computers, but also I want to bring back the memory of people that were like me in the 80s, TV babies, because we were latchkey babies, right? First, let me say that too much screen time is just bad for kids. We know that as a whole. We talk about the eyesight. We could talk about the time that kids need to be ripping and running, which is a recess conversation, which is a different conversation. But it depends on how the screen time is used. As far as doing research or figure it out, for real, to find out that type of data, it's going to be years in the future, especially if we're talking about technology. Remember, technology started in my generation. We were writing computers with DOS. Now suddenly we got these major computers in our hands. So research takes time. If you're trying to do real study and stuff, and all of us know that, they have participated in research. Now go back to the screen times. Sesame Street was screen time. Dora the Explorer was screen time. Encyclopedia Brown was screen time. It's about how these things are utilized. And I believe that if we give teachers the autonomy that they deserve, because they are the educators, they are the ones that know that we can use this screen time effectively. And as far as the social aspect of screen time, anybody with a teenager knows that you can use technology to have socialization. So that's not realistic said because of the social time, because Snapchat, Instagram, all that crap that my kids are on is real. So it's about how we're going to utilize it.
Thank you. Lena Kaufman.
I'm so glad for this question. Technology is a wonderful resource, but we need to use it purposefully and with the input of our teachers. And I would also say medical experts who understand the issues with vision, the issues with ADHD, the other issues that come with lack of sleep when kids have devices in their rooms. We give them digital libraries with stimulating screens and put them to bed reading their bedtime reading on an iPad. I'm not sure we've had any, research-based medical experts talk to us or give parents any guidance on what's appropriate for all this technology. This month is Children's Vision Month, and we know that, extensive screen time can impact children's vision. We could have an expert in to talk to the parent community about, how do you use these devices in the home, since we're sending them home to the home setting too. But teachers too need to be given the autonomy to use this technology well. And that's my other concern. My daughter was in summer school this year for a class she missed. It was digital and only, and there was nothing in it that required a device. She had to read through modules, answer questions, and move on to the next one. And when we talked to her teacher about it, I was told, oh, I'm not a teacher. I'm a helper, a facilitator for her learning, but I'm not her teacher. And
thank you.
That's not good. Yeah.
Jeremy Lapham.
Hi, I am an expert in child adolescent health and development as a family nurse practitioner, school-based health provider. I know that child development is determined by multiple things, and single sources of influence like screen time rarely produce large effects that can be measured. And screen factors is one among many factors that play a role in children's development. So with that saying, it's not so much the screens itself or the means of delivery, it's the lack of individualization. Which is a broader part of the problem in our school districts and curriculum, is that we have to apply these standards across groups of people, and we're not given much room, teachers aren't given much room to individualize learning. And that's really the problem with screens. I've had one student in Ann Arbor Virtual Academy who has thrived in ways he never would have in in-person learning, and another who really struggled with learning online. So I can see the benefit for both students. With respect to the question on research, there are federal guidelines called FERPA that could prohibit doing retrospective studies without getting human subjects permission. So you have to get permission from parents to do research on their kids in schools. So I'd want to know more about the legal and regulatory requirements before doing any kind of research on students in the school, and making sure that parents and students are informed if we did that route. Thanks.
Thank you. Rima Mohammed.
So there is a lot of data that supports less screen time in general, and then how we use screen time. So increasing screen time or using more iPads and computers with really no goals does not mean that we're being innovative. And I wanted to stress that, or with current times. We really need to be more creative with innovation and we don't necessarily have to use devices to do that. But if we are, we do need to use them efficiently and with goals. And some examples that I've been involved in throughout my career include, using innovations such as team-based learning. I would love to see more of that. Flex rooms, lab, physical simulation labs. So actually having more hands-on learning. And we really need to prepare the students for the current and future workforce, not only for those going to college, but those going to non-college paths. So we really have to think about innovation without throwing, adding more computers and devices. And we need to be the leaders in education. And I'm proud to be involved in a university that is very innovative in education, not necessarily, again, focusing on devices. And then, as far as community input, this is crucial. Yes, we have to include all voices, not the voices of a few to make these decisions. And that includes teachers, students, alumni. Why aren't we talking to alumni and seeing what things they're seeing? And community experts in education and health experts as well when we do make these decisions. Thank you.
Susan Ward-Schmidt.
Some really great answers. I'll tell you, the voters are going to have a hard time here, guys, because what an amazing group of candidates, I think. As an instructor, a teacher for so many years, and working with kids with learning disabilities and general ed kids, screen time has taken over the life of children after school. We know that we've done, something in homeroom where we make a graph on the board. How many hours do you spend on a computer, after you leave school? And, we have kids in middle school, 6 hours, they're on a screen. So I think as educators, we know they're getting plenty of screen time, but we have to be very intentional about how we use it. And I think that as a board member, supporting the idea of how do we bring as much as of the peer-reviewed research out there to help inform teachers so that they're doing it the right way. I am very concerned about computer-assisted assessments, especially in the early grades for reading. They're making sounds to them to identify letters and not actually going through the process of having them look at letters and make the sounds, things that don't give a very accurate read about what children can do in the early grades. And I think that the very young children, screen time can really get in the way of some of the time that needs to be spent on learning to form letters and some of the very foundational skills for reading, which reading, of course, is connected to everything else. So I think the intentionality and supporting our teachers so that they can use it in the proper fashion.
Thank you. So moving back to a moderator question. Just prior to the pandemic, Ann Arbor passed a major bond allowing for ongoing capital investment in the district. What are your thoughts on the bond's impact to date, and how should it address the district's needs and priorities moving forward? And I'm going to begin with Susan Basquette.
Oh, that's not fair. The bond is one of the most exciting things we have going on, and thank you to the voters. I happen to sit on the bond committee. Reluctantly, I didn't want to do it because I lived the horrors of the last major capital campaign and building Skyline, and Deb will remember that with me. But I was persuaded because there were a lot of lessons learned. I am very impressed, again, selfishly, I am on the bond committee with the process that we're doing right now. We have a wonderful group of people who have volunteered to be our advisory. We are starting with the most needy populations in the building new schools, Mitchell and Pathways. I can't tell you the frustrations of some of our kids of being almost a grown adult in an elementary sized building, as our students at Pathways have been. Mitchell, again, addressing the needs of this side of town, the southeast side of town, a brand new building. Very exciting what's going on. We will have opportunity for community engagement. So please, everyone, look on the calendars to get input. We purchased a lot of property, as some of you may have heard. We're looking for input as well to alleviate the overcrowding. When you talk about enrollment dip, it was okay for us because we were very overcrowded in some places. So again, look forward to that and look forward to hearing from our community on the future of our building. Thank you to the community for supporting us and allowing us to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Kai Cortina.
Well, this is a hard act to follow. Yes, I was actually very impressed with what a margin this bond actually passed, and that shows how much our community understands long-term investments in schools. We can't always just repair old buildings. We have to have the flexibility to actually tear them down and build new ones occasionally because the needs change because of technology or heating issues. This is a long list. So I think for me, this is, as Susan Basquette, elaborately, outlined here, this was a big success for us. And I hope we will, continue on this path to really have long-term planning. And I think probably all of us who sit here who will be work as trustees understand that this is an important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacinda Townsend, guide us.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I think we would all agree that teachers are our gold, our absolute gold. They are what makes the schools run. They are what make the schools good. And I would love to see, I think it's great they got a 1% raise, over the next 3 years, but my cost of living rose way more than 1% this year. So I would love to see us put money there. But also, and I think I may be the only artist on the panel, so I want to give a shout out to arts education because it's something that's always under political assault, something that's always neglected. But, I've been an arts educator for the last 20 years, and I've taught in prisons, I've taught in elementary schools, in addition to the university context. And, I've seen the transformative power of the arts for children, not only the way it helps integrate other academic areas, but also just the power of art itself, and also, as someone who is an artist after doing a couple of other things, I think it's a shame that we don't tell children, hey, you can actually go into the arts. That's something like our American K-12 educational system does not do well at all. But Ann Arbor does a pretty good job. One of my kids is going to Interlochen this summer, courtesy AAPS. We couldn't have afforded her to go to Interlochen this year. Both of my children are in orchestra, but we need to shore up all the arts, visual, dance. I'd love to see some of the bond money go towards things like making sure all children have instruments that they can bring home, making sure that we preserve the ability of children to go to these camps in the summer, and even lengthen it. Like, I think they all get to go for a week. Why not 2? Because the arts are powerful. Thank you.
Jamila James.
Hi. So I've actually looked into this, the bond. So one thing we have to make sure is understood about what capital investment is, of the things that this bond can and cannot be used for. I would love for it to go for teacher salaries and arts and stuff like that. The problem is that this bond is very specific about the things that it can be worked on. One of the 3 things that can be worked on is technology, which I know some of the funding for the computers that went out for the kids were for that. Most of this money is for buildings, and we can't use it for maintenance. We have to use it to create new things. So when you talk about how it's been used thus far, so good. We'll have to see what happens in the future. I love the fact that there will be community involvement with the discussion of how this money is being paid, but it's very specific about what it can be used for. One of the things that it has been used for is putting HVACs into schools, which is uplifting or changing, cleaning up the air quality in the schools. The fact that we're using it to build new buildings is awesome. When we talk about Mitchell actually has pods outside for classrooms. So far, so good. I'm very interested to see how it goes, how it continues to go forward, and hoping that we're staying on task and none of this money kind of drifts away on unnecessary things, because this should be done for need, not wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Lena Kaufman. Make sure you're unmuted.
First, thank you to Jamila for clarifying. I was noting that as well. We can only spend this money for our buildings. And I wanted to bring out one other fantastic things that about how we're spending this money, and that is to make our buildings more energy efficient and greener and addressing climate change. Climate change is an issue for all of us, but it's a bigger issue for our children because their lifespans are longer than ours, or should be. And they'll be dealing with the impact of climate change. So slowing this as much as we can and taking an ownership of this, even in Ann Arbor Public Schools, is so important. I also want to thank the district. They used some of this money during the pandemic to make our buildings better at the air quality. They had touchless doors, faucets that you could turn off touchless. We had social distancing stickers. All of these improvements made our buildings some of the safest places to have had in-person school.
Thank you. Jeremy Lapham.
Sure, it's fortunate we got this since Michigan's one of the only states to fund with property tax, but also cap local property taxes. So it's certainly a challenge. And the bond goes towards teaching, learning, safe health and well-being, sustainable buildings, that sort of thing. And I think the best way to use the money and to look at how to spend the money is to do community-based participatory strategic planning. So working with key stakeholders in the community, parents, families, teachers, administrators, experts, and encourage that sort of planning process. And then develop a revenue strategy that focuses on providing student-centered funding for all kids. So focusing emphasis on funding schools where the highest need is. So places where students are experiencing poverty, geographic isolation, where there's English language learners, special education, and where there's career and technical education that's desired by people. Then anything we could do for before and after school pair programs, I'm not sure how the bond would fit into there. And then investing in teachers, principals, and administrators. So looking at different evidence-based strategies to attract talent, keep talent, recruit diverse talent, and ensure that we have good, strong local partnerships with the educational institutions, those institutions that are turning out educators to help support the field, but also to recruit people into the field to replace those teachers that are retiring. And then supporting leadership development for administrators to learn how to lead schools and systems more effectively. So those are some of the things I would look into. But again, I would want to get feedback from the community through the systems that are already established.
Thank you. Rima Mohammed.
So I echo what Jeremy has said, especially when it comes to that. We really, the key thing is we do need input from all members of the community and key stakeholders to make these decisions. So I think that is the first step, not planning, plan with them. So not planning ahead, but plan with them. And then also we do need to, as far as getting feedback, it shouldn't just be based on surveys or, open forums or board meetings. There has to be multiple modes of community input. And that includes outreaches, focus groups, school visits from trustees and administrators, phone calls, and other methods of communication. It is very crucial to do this to make sure that all voices are heard, especially when looking at the bond and how we use it. And then that it also ensures, inclusiveness, transparencies, and for the community feeling part of the decision-making process. Such things that, has been discussed, but of course, looking at infrastructure and how we can update them. But again, it should not be based on, as I mentioned before, computers and devices. We really have to think outside the box. Team-based learning, labs, simulation labs, hands-on learning, also other things as increasing busing and making them that they're efficient. We really have to look at environmental and sustainable decisions as well. And I believe having experts in task force addressing these will help. Thank you.
Susan Ward-Schmidt.
Yes, I was involved in a huge bond that passed in East Lansing. And one thing that, although a bond is for capital improvements, what happens is if you go in and make better efficiencies and ability because of renovations, you take offline a school that's very inefficient and build new, what you end up with, you realize some financial savings. And those things can be used, those financial savings, for increasing teacher pay, for some of the wish lists that we all have. So even though the money isn't directly being used for those things, indirectly it can. As an example, we had a high school that had 5 roof systems, and we basically knocked down the entire high school and built a new high school. And that we rolled into that furniture costs and all kinds of things that you would have had to buy anyway out of our general fund. So it's important to do this in a smart way. I agree with many of the panelists that involving the community is very important, especially the teachers. The teacher's working environment is your students' learning environment. And we really are, I believe, expert on what spaces and things work for us so that we can do our job. So, but having everybody present is very important. And I loved Rima's suggestion of finding different modes to be able to connect with people. I think that that's important, no matter if you're a city trying to gather information, a school district. If you really want to find out what people think, you've really got to find different ways to reach out.
Thank you. Andy Spencer.
When my brother, who I mentioned earlier is a superintendent on the west side of the state, when I told him that we passed here in Ann Arbor a $1 billion bond issue, his mind was blown. It's such, his reaction was, that is such an amazing opportunity for the students over the next 20 years. So yeah, I guess it's not quite 20, but it's a great opportunity. I think what's been done so far, especially given the pandemic, which has slowed a lot of that sort of work down, has been great. I think the air handling improvements were very timely. Pioneer High School has 10 air changes per hour, almost 9.9 as measured by us. So I think that sort of thing is great. I will say that I would 100% agree with the importance of communication. I'm someone who's interested in this sort of thing just because this is what my family would talk about at dinner, bond proposals, things like this. It's not that easy to find all the information about the bond and how it's been being spent and how it will be spent in the future. That information is out there, but it's typically not at a very detailed level. I'd like to share more transparently with the community, not only what's planned, but in these big buckets, but also how the decisions are made, what data was used from the community to make the decisions and the priorities. So I'd love to see more of that from the district.
Thank you. Leslie Wilkins.
It is a really exciting opportunity to have this bond pass and have such support from the community. And it's also a huge responsibility to make sure that we're spending this money correctly. We need to leverage this capital investment in ways that make our school district desirable. We want people to continue to move to Ann Arbor specifically because of the schools, just like I did. Newer buildings, strong infrastructure, solid technology will attract families. It seems that most of the improvements, like we've said, have to do with the pandemic response so far, such as improved ventilation, touchless drinking fountains, that kind of thing. I think we need to continue to prioritize the improvements that have the biggest impact on our students' health and well-being, including their mental health. And at the same time, I'm committed to making sure the funds from the bond are also spent in environmentally conscious, sustainable ways, and not merely Band-Aid solutions. And again, we'll need to rely on the community and the experts in those fields. And I'm with Jacinda. If there's any kind of creative way we can put some of this money toward improvements that also help the arts programs in Ann Arbor, I'm all about that.
Thank you. Our next question comes from amongst those we received from the public prior to today. What are your thoughts on the disparity in population size among the 3 comprehensive high schools and on any impact the in-district transfer or school of choice programs might have in these disparities? What, if anything, should the board instruct the district to do? And I'm going to start with Jacinda Townsend. Guide us.
Actually, if I could just interrupt for 1 second, Deb. So we've now reached noon. So this is the normal ending time of the meeting. If you could just, is this going to be the last question for the group?
How long are people willing to stay? Can we go to 12:30 or is 12:15 sufficient? 12:15?
12:30 works for me.
12:15 is better for me.
All right. So
Sorry.
what I'm going to ask is that you answer this question quickly. And if we have a chance, we will do the last very quick question from the audience, because we do have one that's pretty quick.
I just have a question. Is this question in the chat here? I don't want you to repeat it. No, it isn't. All right. I just wasn't sure what the question was, but go ahead. I'll figure it out.
I think there were 3 questions.
Could you please reread that question? Because it seems
Yeah,
very detailed.
Of course. So, what are your thoughts on the disparity in population size among the 3 comprehensive high schools and on any impact the in-district transfer school of choice programs might have in these disparities? What, if anything, should the board instruct the district to do?
So can you guys hear me? Am I unmuted? Yes. Okay, so I don't have many thoughts on this, so I'll be very brief and say that I think that it's maybe not even a question of the school size so much as the fact that there are other disparities that happen when you implement schools of choice the way we do. And earlier when I said, the way we do it, I mean, it's a state law. Locally, we can sort of choose to implement it the way we want. The way we do it, I think most encourages parents to once a year say, I would like my children to go to school with the wealthiest children possible. There are other ways we could do it. as insofar as I do not like schools of choice, I actually applied for it this year. I was very proud of my kid because she chose to stay at the most diverse school. But I realized that our reasoning is a reason some parents might want to do it for, social or other reasons. So I don't think we need to do away with it altogether. But I do think we really need to be intentional about the way we're implementing schools of choice, because there are all kinds of disparities between the three high schools. We know that, not just numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamila James.
Could you repeat the first part of that question again?
What are your thoughts on the disparity in population size among the three comprehensive high schools and on any impact the in-district transfer school of choice programs might have in these disparities?
Okay. So if we're talking about the population size of the classes of the schools, I'm not really sure how I think about that. So first of all, honestly, I do participate in school of choice. I'm in a Pioneer district, and my first two children did attend Pioneer. My youngest goes to high school at Skyline. It was not my choice, but it's a lot of awesome programs at Skyline that I really support, despite the fact that there is such a huge inequity and disproportionate amount of wealthy kids at that school. As a single parent, I'm not a wealthy person, so that causes all types of issues, plus her being a child of color. That being said, if we're talking about population size of the schools, that makes me think of class sizes, and that's something that we really need to work on. But as far as what school of choice have to do with that, I honestly am not well knowledge on that, and I definitely would need more information about that. But as far as school of choice, I kind of like the opportunity simply because Ann Arbor does have such a diversity in the way what schools offer. But again, that could be a detriment as well, because I shouldn't have to go all the way to Skyline for my children to have those type of offerings. So that's all I can say about that.
Lena Kaufman.
This is a topic that I would definitely want to listen to the community a lot about, to understand all of the various concerns, because as Jamila said, there are advantages and disadvantages to in-district transfer. For many families, finding that school community like open that fits their family best is really important, and being able to give that type of choice within our school system is really important for keeping families in our school system. Our enrollment is an issue we always have to keep in mind, because teacher pay comes out of the per pupil allowance, and if we're losing students, we lose money that we can apply towards paying our teachers and supporting them. So it's a very, very complicated question. I would definitely want to hear more from the community about the reasons why people are switching schools and possibly crowding into one and passing over another. And I think the superintendent had a great program there was a high school, an elementary school that had such an issue when she came on board, and she did some great programs to attract more families back to that school. That might be some type of solution for changing the high schools in a more positive way.
Jeremy Lapham.
Sure, I know Skyline was built because of crowding in Pioneer and other district school buildings. So it's good that we have more opportunities. Families have different configurations, and having school of choice is helpful for families like that. They may have parents in different homes or live in different geographic regions of the city where it makes more sense to go to one or the other. And for my kids, they have a choice between schools just by nature of where I live. I think that continuing such programs really need to keep the balance between looking at advantage and disadvantaged students central to any kind of policy change. And also ensuring that we can afford the cost of reaching those goals. It's not so much that, I'm trying to think how to put this. as we add more programs, we think like when we're building new schools or seeing students move to new buildings, we need to look at like why that is. I know like a lot of parents want to go to King because of the STEM focus. Some of the schools on the north side of town have different focuses. And I think that based on their assessment of their own child's learning needs, they make those kinds of decisions as well. But if we're seeing a lot of desire for that, we need to look at how we can offer those programs at a comparable level in the other schools. Otherwise, it's just going to be an enormous waste of resources to build more schools just to have people not want to go to them. So I think meeting those goals, we're going to have to challenge norms, use creative thinking, and engage the community, and probably have a lot of political will for why we make those decisions.
Rima Mohammed.
So school of choice and district transfer programs may have impacted disparities and other things, but I want to stress, as an educator and researcher, I stress that we really need to look at the data before making these assumptions. We really need to evaluate student learning, teacher resources and development, student resources and support, such as the availability of busing, because those are also very crucial, especially if you're going to do school of choice, and other factors that can impact learning, especially people of color, refugees, and other underserved and unrepresented populations, especially those that do pick something such as, decide to do school of choice or in district transfer. And then community input and engagement is crucial, and will provide a lot of rich data regarding these issues and reasons why behind school of choice and in-district transfer decisions. And it's the same way as looking at, well, why are students moving to charter schools as well? So we really have to look at that and hopefully, build a team, look at this, build a task force of experts, of all key, stakeholders and members of the community to address these things. Thank you.
Susan Ward-Schmidt.
So the two types of transfers, we have the school of choice, which a school board can control how many people come from outside the district, and that helps you fill some of your financial holes. Your permeable boundaries, or in-district transfers, people call them, does allow parents to try to look across a district and find the right place for their child. There are unintended consequences for in-district transfers. When I taught in Lansing schools, we had magnet schools, we had performing arts schools, we had these different things. And we have to be real about understanding that many times that will cause some segregation, which to me is a problem. So I think that what a point Jamila made is we want to make sure that all of our schools have what they need, number one, so that someone doesn't feel like I need to go to that school because it's better. And absolutely, Rima, you made a good point about trying to understand what the community wants, but there are all kinds of reasons people choose different schools. I mean, we watched it at Scarlet. Children that could have gone on to Huron went to Pioneer because they had a cousin that went there, or they went to Skyline because they were involved in an after-school thing in that part of town. So this has so many moving pieces to it, but I think doing some study on it, but we do have to understand that when we start to really make schools uneven, that you're going to end up with parents that have the ability to get their kids there, and other things that it can cause people to segregate and by socioeconomic levels. And I think that's an issue.
Andy Spencer.
Following up on Susan's comment, I think that it's something the district can control. You apply for an in-district transfer, you apply for a school of choice, and the school has some control over what transfers are allowed. I'm sure within the law, right? Within state law. I feel incredibly fortunate as a parent here to have 3 major high schools, any one of which is fantastic compared to the high school I went to, okay, by a long shot. And so, with our son, who's a high schooler at Pioneer, we live in Huron district. For years, he said, oh, I want to go to Huron. Well, what about, there are options. Well, no, I want to go to Huron. Okay, great. So going to go to Huron until the last minute, in which case he said, well, no, all my friends are going to Pioneer. So from baseball, so I want to go to Pioneer. So There wasn't a ton of thought that went into that in our family, and our younger son will probably choose something other than his older brother because that's his personality. He'll probably stay at Huron. So I think the population size themselves of those schools vary from 1,400 to 1,900. And in my experience, anecdotally, talking to neighbors and friends in the community, it kind of ebbs and flows. There was a time when you couldn't get into Pioneer. There wasn't room, and you had to go to Skyline if you wanted to do an in-district transfer. That was not the case now. I think most recent thing I heard, again, anecdotally, was that last year and the year before, there was no room at Skyline. So I think it ebbs and flows. We need to be intentional about how we allow these transfers. And that's my views on that topic.
Leslie Wilkins?
Again, we've had a lot of great stuff from other folks. So I'm not going to echo a lot of that. The one thing that help schools of choice contributes to the rich diversity that our schools have. They're not as diverse as they should be, but especially on my side of town, looking at Huron High School at the, sitting at my son's graduation this year and hearing all the different names and seeing all of the different cultures represented. And a lot of that is thanks to schools of choices that parents have made, families have made. And whatever changes that happen to the program and to the system, because I do see that there are issues with that. I think we need to keep the diversity in mind and keep those families that are choosing Ann Arbor Public Schools as a school of choice, the actual meaning of the words. We need to keep that in the forefront and make sure that we're catering to those families as well.
Susan Basquette?
Thank you. I challenged the question. We at the board have received this question, this accusation or allegation, if you will, in the past. And when we looked into the data, it wasn't true. There wasn't a big difference in size. And as someone pointed out, that was one of the reasons we built a new high school, because we wanted to address the population. Absolutely correct. We as a district, at the board, we determined whether we want to take more students through schools of choice. Administration helps decide if we have room in certain places for the in-district transfer. One thing we do not control as a Board of Education is housing, affordable housing, available housing. Remember, we have 7 municipalities in our district. Our students come from 7 municipalities before schools of choice. So we don't control what's happening in the building in Pittsfield, north side of town, south side of town. And if the children live in those geographical areas, they are entitled to go to that particular high school. They don't even have it. So it could be not caused by schools of choice, but again, lack of affordable housing. We know students are moving out of our districts because it is costly to live in Ann Arbor. We know students are coming into our district again because the wonderful house on the north side of town is now available. So again, let's look at the data and let's then determine what is causing the issues, what we can control as a district moving forward. That's all I'll say on that. Thank you.
And I'm going to give the last word today to Kai Cortina.
Yeah, I think the question was referring specifically to high school, and I think we can exhale. I mean, if we have diversity issues, they are, from a psychological perspective, they are more crucial for elementary school. High school transfers, as was mentioned, has very idiosyncratic reasons. If you want to do football, you better avoid Pioneer. If you want to do band, you better choose Pioneer. And all the schools have different profiles, and this is great. And I'm glad that we have transfer, and we also have community high, right? Not to, and people can actually mix and match. We have a wonderful system, and I'm really, really not worried about that. But having said that, these are public record data. People can actually look this up, how the diversity are, or whether there are differences between the schools in the demographic makeup of the students. This is not really rocket science. Everybody can look this up. And I know for a fact that, of course, the school administration, the superintendent, they monitor that. With that, thank you.
Excellent. So, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. We could have asked a million more questions, and I want to assure the candidates that they will be asked a million more questions as they continue their campaigns. So, all the best of luck to you all as you move forward there. I want to thank all our panelists today: Susan Basquette, Kai Cortina, Jacinda Townsend Gaitis, Jamila James, Lena Kaufman, Jeremy Lapham, Remo Mohammed, Susan Ward-Schmidt, Andy Spencer, and Leslie Wilkins for giving us their time and thoughts on this wide range of challenges and opportunities that they may be addressing if they are elected to be a trustee and serve on the Ann Arbor Board of Education. A recording of this panel will be available shortly. Check out the Washtenaw County Democratic Party's website for posting information. I want to thank you all for watching today, and I want you all to have a great rest of your Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
And
Take
this will
care.
be posted.
Thank you.
For a civil conversation.